Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive, and so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. And of course, you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive. And in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $72 contribution, you get the new edition. Troy Miller and I spent a year and a half going through all the research and updating everything and getting this thing exactly right with all the new climate change information, the last hours of ancient sunlight. That's with a $72 contribution, autographed by the author. Hey, we really need your help right now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. You've heard me say it a lot. It's probably on your screen. The Free Speech TV, if you want this network to keep running, to keep going, I mean, you know, probably 2 failed fundraising drives, and we're going to wrap it up. I mean, that's how important this is. This is the principal source of funding for this television network is you. And people like you. And, you know, I get it that some people it's tight, they can't afford it. You know, I understand that. I'm not asking for anybody to contribute money if they can't afford to. But I also know, and just from the years that I listened to public radio and only occasionally called in and made a contribution, that most people, you know, they go, oh, well, you know, there's a fund drive pitch going on, I think I'll go make a sandwich, or time to use the bathroom. You know, but it's not time to pick up the phone and, you know, participate. Well, it needs to be. We're way behind, and we need your help. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. And, you know, there are some premiums with certain contribution levels with a $20 gift. We've got this Free Speech TV 3x8-inch clear window sticker. With a $60 gift, you get a Tag Your It coffee mug with my picture on it, for better or for worse. Wasn't my idea. With a $72 gift, you get the 2008 edition of my book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. This is new and improved, and in fact, there's probably about that much new material in it that, you know, it's a good chunk. It was about 20% of the whole book got changed to update all the climate change stuff. And this is a great gift for the holidays. If you know anybody who has any interest at all in climate change and sociology and anthropology and history, in democracy, and I mean, just all kinds of topics are covered in this book, all within the wrap of you know, ancient sunlight being fossil fuels. And it's only the second book that's been endorsed by God in the last 2,000 years. 2,000 years ago, in the New Testament, God endorsed the Old Testament, right? And back, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, in Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh's book, God says, you need to read The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight if you want to know what's going on with climate change and things. And it was so cool that we issued a news release. You know, God has endorsed a book for the second time in history. So, you know, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but, you know, it's a true story. I don't know that it's actually God, but in any case, that's with the $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt and a sticker. That could be $10 a month for a year. With a $240 gift, Louise and I are putting together a webinar. We're going to do this online and live, and we're going to be talking about how NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, I'm not only trained as an NLP practitioner, but also as an NLP trainer. Louise is trained as an NLP practitioner, as I recall, or master practitioner, I guess it is. we've written books about NLP, NLP and its application to ADHD. That book is called Healing ADD. My book on NLP and trauma is called Walking Your Blues Away, and my book on NLP and political communication is called Cracking the Code. So we've been in this stuff for a long time, and it's going to be a fascinating webinar, $240. Talks about communication and interpersonal relations and business and all kinds of things. With a $360 gift, you get 5 books: The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, The Thom Hartmann Reader, and Rebooting the American Dream, all by me, and Greg Palast's The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. With a $480 gift, you get everything that I've mentioned. The sticker, the T-shirt, the mug, the Tag Your coffee mug, the Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, the Thom Hartmann Reader, Rebooting the American Dream, Best Democracy Money Can Buy. I mean, this is the kitchen sink, $480. Or $40 a month for a year. And with $1,000, come to Portland, Oregon here, and you can watch the last hour of the show, and I'll take you to lunch. There's a nice restaurant right down the street that treats us very well and has great food. And it's always a fascinating time. I've just met some extraordinary people. I've learned a lot, and it's nice just getting to know the people who support Free Speech TV. So please call now, 877-378-8669. This is real. Free Speech TV really needs your help right now. It's a very, very critical time for this network. The political year last year and in through this year, with the elections coming up, has been a real challenge, because a lot of people give their money to political causes rather than to Free Speech TV. We really need your help. 877-378-8669. Thank you so much for your help.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. I want to talk today about, to start out, actually, here's a snapshot of our program today. In our second hour, Matt Taibbi is going to be with us talking about how our press is actually making us hate each other for money, and what that means to America and American democracy. In our third hour, Mike Farrell, the just absolutely brilliant actor, you probably remember him most vividly from MASH, at least I do, is a death penalty activist, and he's going to be on talking about what they're up to these days, how the fight goes to end the death penalty in the United States and remove us from the company of Iran and North Korea, among the most barbarous nations in the world, executing our civilians. But I want to start out with the damage that is being done to this country by the corruption, largely within the Republican Party, that was countenanced by the Supreme Court in Citizens United, and going back, and the Buckley decision was the beginning of this in 67, but it carries through right to today, in 76, and it carries right through to today. And for example, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, they fired a guy named Seth Frothman, or perhaps he quit. I mean, he was basically forced out. He was the student loan watchdog there. And student loans are now over $1.5 trillion. This is a phenomena that literally did not exist as an industry when, when a lot of us were kids, when a lot of us were going to college, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's a long time ago, but this is something new. This was brought to us by Reagan. This was something, Bill Bennett, Reagan's Secretary of Education, all over this. Let's make, at that point in time when Reagan came into office, about 80% of the cost of a college education was paid for by state, federal, local government, and the college itself, and 20% was paid for with tuition. And what that meant was that pretty much everyone could afford to go to college. And now that's been reversed. Now 80% of the cost of college is paid for with tuition, and only 20% is covered by all these other agencies. And so the consequence of that, and this is just, a big change that has really just happened since the late 1980s. The consequence of that is that we're now $1.5 trillion in debt just to go to college, which is crazy. So the guy who was at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which Mick Mulvaney runs, one of the most corrupt administrators in Washington, D.C., the guy who was running this student loan program within the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is forced out, and so he has started his own new nonprofit. It's called the Student Borrower Protection Center, and you might want to write that down and Google it if you're one of the millions and millions of American families who are struggling with debt. The $1.5 trillion that American student debtors now own, that debt is growing faster than car loans. It's growing faster than mortgages. It's growing faster than credit card balances. So that's just like one example. Here's another, Medicare. The, what's her name? Seema Verma, I think. Let's see here. Yeah, Seema Verma is the administrator of the Centers for Medicare and whatever the S is, and CMS is the program, and she has been sending out emails basically promoting the Medicare Advantage plans, which are actually not Medicare plans. With Medicare Advantage, you're buying a health insurance policy from a private insurance company that has nothing to do with Medicare. It is private insurance. It's just that you and I, through our tax dollars, we are paying the insurance company back for the cost of your claims, right? If you have a Medicare Advantage plan and you go to the hospital and the health insurance company has to pay $50,000 for your hospitalization, the federal government reimburses them for that $50,000 for your plan, plus the 20% that they skim off the top. So, I mean, this is very, very profitable for the health insurance companies. It's very profitable for AARP. It's very profitable for United Healthcare, the largest provider of these things. And these notes that they send out don't mention the fact that you're no longer in Medicare and you don't have the protections that you would have in Medicare. And what you do have is a contract with a private health insurance company that, can screw with you. And not only that, if you want to go to a doctor who's not in their system, and which is how they regulate their costs, is they have these tight little networks of doctors that have plans and procedures. If you're not part of this, then you're totally out of luck. And she's sending out emails to say, have you looked at Medicare Advantage plans from private insurance companies yet? With Medicare Advantage, you can pick a variety of plans based on your zip code and basic health status. Out-of-pocket spending for the original Medicare. You can get an idea of what your out-of-pocket spending for the original Medicare versus Medicare Advantage. This plan includes deductibles and prescription drug copays. And Robert Pear with the New York Times said, this email sounds more like Medicare Advantage plans advertising than objective information from a public agency. So you've got that. That's like number 2. Number 3, in Georgia, there's a nuclear power plant, actually 2 of them, of Plant Vogtle, that the Southern Company began building in 2013 with $8 billion in federal loan guarantees. Turns out that they're now years behind schedule and billions of dollars over budget. And they're going to the regulator, to the commissioner. Right now it's an incumbent Republican. His name is Chuck Eaton. And they're going to Chuck Eaton and saying, this $2-3 billion that we've lost, that we've fallen behind in this thing, we would like you to have the ratepayers of Georgia, the people who are buying electricity, make us whole, cover our expenses because we screwed up. And he's got a woman running against him, a Democrat, in a runoff that's happening today. Her name is Lindy Miller. She's a Democrat in Georgia. And she's a big advocate of nuclear power, and she thinks the plant should be built. She just doesn't think that the people, the electricity consumers, should be footing the bill. She's saying, you should take it out of your operating profits, and if you need to take a bite out of somebody, reduce your executive salaries and reduce your dividends. And so now Southern Company and a bunch of others, they've started this thing called Georgians for a Brighter Future. which just kicked off. And it's largely funded by the nuclear industry, although we don't know all the details because the Supreme Court said that you don't have to tell the details when you buy a politician. And they're spending a fortune to get the Republican reelected. Now, why is this consequential? These are just, three simple examples, right? Why is this consequential? Because people are dying. People are literally killing themselves as a result of the corruption and the economy that's been brought about by that corruption, which has wiped out the middle class to a large extent in the United States, the working class, and put enormous pressure on low-income people and the poor, and has boosted literally trillions of dollars up to the top 1%. You'll recall that, in fact, and here it is, life expectancy in the United States declined from 2016 to 2017. The principal reason was an increase in suicide rates. 3.7% increase in suicide rates, just in 1 year, the first year of Trump. Overdose rates are up too, but if you look at suicide, it's particularly consequential. If you compare it from 1999, right, the last year of the Clinton presidency, to last year, 2017, the suicide rate among men increased 26%, and the suicide rate among women increased 53%. And the major increase for both men and women was in the age group of 45 to 64. Those are the people who, when they lose their good job that had good pay and good benefits, and the only option left to them is to work at Arby's or drive an Uber car, low pay and no benefits. Those are the people who already, they have their life set. They've got their mortgage set. They've got, all these expenses associated with the lifestyle that they have, and they have no option. So how long do you think that we can maintain this insanely corrupted political system in the United States before something breaks? Or actually, what I'm saying here is that something's already broken. It's us. And my question is, what can we and should we do about this? Obviously, political action, getting politically involved, but this is really deep. I mean, this goes back to the Chicago schoolboys they did it to Russia, they did it to the United States. With the Reagan administration, this whole conservative economics thing, which takes us back to the BBC report from 2002. This is September 18, 2002. The headline, "More Suicides Under Conservative Rule." And I'll just read you a couple of sentences from this BBC. This is not an op-ed. This is a news story. They compared suicide statistics over a almost 100-year period from 1901 to 1998. This is a 2002 article. The researchers took into account periods of drought and World War II. After adjusting for these factors, the figures clearly showed the highest rates of suicide occurred when both conservative state and federal governments were in power. Conversely, the lowest rates occurred when state and federal governments were both liberal. Under conservatives, when the conservatives ruled both state and federal government, men were 17% more likely to commit suicide than Labor was in power. Women were 40% more likely to kill themselves. And then they say, translate this into real numbers. Overall, they say the figures suggest that 35,000 people would not have died had the conservatives not been in power during the 20th century. 35,000 people directly. So has this impacted you? Has this affected your life? Has it affected the lives of people you know? What do you say to them? How do we communicate this to people that we are being killed, we are killing ourselves, and it's the corruption of our political process by big money that is doing this? And now we've got, a billionaire running a television network, Rupert Murdoch and Fox, and you got a billionaire in the White House, and the two of them are doing a dance to basically fool all of us and not to talk about this kind of corruption. At the same time that now in Michigan and Wisconsin, they're trying to take away the power of the governor and trying to eliminate the power of the governor's office to prosecute things like, or to have a say in things like voter suppression.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
I mean, this is insane. We talk about Trump being corrupt, but it's like the entire system from top to bottom has been corrupted by these Supreme Court decisions. Open Secrets just published a piece over on commondreams.org, the 2017 financials of the Koch dark money network, another dimension of this rather naked corruption. And, you know, there are 4 nonprofits at the crux of his network, of their network. There was the Charles Koch Institute, Americans for Prosperity, the American Prosperity Foundation, and Freedom Partners. And these groups, you know, despite prohibition from making politics their primary purpose, many politically active 501c3 nonprofits spending follows a pattern of jumping during election years and dropping during off years. And the Charles Koch Institute got a cash infusion of $55 million in 2017, more than triple the $16 million it made in 2016. This is, you know, basically the challenge that Open Secrets is laying out is that this isn't actually a charity, and it shouldn't be tax deductible. This is actually a political organization. A large chunk of the institutes, let's see here, they spend, their highest paid employee makes over $500,000. Americans for Prosperity has functioned as the Koch's primary hub for funding its web of conservative and libertarian political advocacy groups, writes Open Secrets. It remains one of the country's most influential organizations. It has a new super PAC that they launched during the 2018. They have strong opposition. They oppose doing anything about global warming. They oppose expanding Medicaid. They oppose raising the minimum wage. They oppose protecting unions. And they oppose collective bargaining. They made $57 million in 2017. This is just amazing, the amounts of money. I mean, you know, what these groups do. And they say, the Americans for Prosperity Foundation didn't report any political campaign spending, but the organization spent $1 million on lobbying and $20 million on things, quote, aligned with the group's purpose. And then there's Freedom Partners. There's another political advocacy group focused on free market policies. This is a 501c6, sort of like a chamber of commerce. And same thing, $47.5 million. I mean, these organizations, people yell and scream about George Soros, who put, I don't know what, somewhere between $3 and $5 million into the last election, I think. That's nothing. And I mean, this stuff is big and growing. So, you know, the blue chip companies are piling on. By the way, I've got some economic news for you. We hit a milestone yesterday. Yesterday, the Treasury Department needed to sell treasuries, in other words, borrow money, in order to fund the Trump tax cuts. And foreigners weren't buying. And so the yield went up. The yield curve has now inverted. Short-term treasuries are now paid more than long-term treasuries, which whenever it happens means a recession is coming. Now, very often it takes a year or two for that recession to hit, but it means a recession is coming. We'll get into that a little more later on. We'll be right back. So the article over at the Huffington Post, Midwestern Republicans, try to kneecap new Democratic governors. Tony Evers is the incoming Democratic new governor for Wisconsin. And in Wisconsin, they are doing everything they can to take away from him the power that Scott Walker has enjoyed for the last, I believe it's 8 years. This is the same thing, by the way, that the Republicans did in North Carolina 2 years ago. And they got away with it. I mean, some of it was retracted as a consequence of lawsuits, but by and large, they got away with it. When Republican Pat McCrory got kicked out by Roy Cooper in South Carolina, or North Carolina, the legislature cut his power to make appointments. They say, you can't appoint these people anymore. We'll do that, because the Republicans still control the legislature. In Wisconsin, even though well over half of the people in Wisconsin voted for Democrats for the Wisconsin House of Representatives, well over half of the House of Representatives is Republicans. Why? Because of gerrymandering. Because they redrew the maps in 2010. And, you know, Michigan also heavily gerrymandered for the Republicans. And then we've got another one. I mean, this is just crazy. In North Carolina, Mark Harris, the Republican, says he beat Dan McCready, the Democrat, by 900 votes. But there's thousands, literally thousands of absentee ballots from largely black counties that just somehow never made it back to the ballot counting place. Absentee ballots from all the white counties came back just fine. And other black counties, their absentee ballots came in just fine, where this guy wasn't on the ticket. But in these two counties, I mean, this is incredible. And then Judd Legum of Popular Information, he got copies of 162 absentee ballot envelopes. Now, the envelopes are where the witness to the ballot signs it, saying, yes, you know, this person actually is Joe Blow who's voting. And what they found is that 130 of them had been signed by just 8 people. Right? Now, how do 8 people be witness? Typically, when you send in your ballot, it's signed by your spouse, by your kids, by your friends, by your next door neighbor. You got to have 2 signatures, right? Yes, this is so and so. This is 130 of these that have been signed by just 8 people. That's like not possible. Well, it turns out that there was this person, Ginger Eason, who witnessed 31 of the ballots, and she said, I was helping McCrae pick up ballots for which she was paid between $75 and $100, which, by the way, is against the law. In North Carolina, the election law says that only the voter or a near relative can hand in an absentee ballot. That's it. So it looks like, you know, ballots that might have gone for the Republican were essentially robo-signed, and these people were paid $100 to do it, and the ballots that were coming out of black neighborhoods were apparently thrown away. And that literally people went door to door and said, you know, I'm here from the state, give me your ballot, when actually they were from this Republican campaign. The question in my mind is, why is nobody talking about, you know, Republican Mark Harris and the people around him going to jail? But, you know, this is American corruption. We're starting to increasingly behave like, you know, Duterte's Philippines. And now, just like BBC found in the UK and in Australia over a 100-year period, 97-year period, when conservatives ran either of those two countries, the suicide rate went up substantially. And now here in the United States, the suicide rate has just jumped really significantly.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So how do we talk to our friends and neighbors about this? How do you counsel your friends who are the victims of Reaganomics? What do we do about this? Your calls after the break. Hey, we really need your help right now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. You've heard me say it a lot. It's probably on your screen. The Free Speech TV, if you want this network to keep running, to keep going, I mean, you know, probably 2 failed fundraising drives, and we're going to wrap it up. I mean, that's how important this is. This is the principal source of funding for this television network is you and people like you. And, you know, I get it that some people it's tight, they can't afford it. You know, I understand that. I'm not asking for anybody to contribute money if they can't afford to. But I also know, and just from the years that I listened to public radio and only occasionally called in and made a contribution, that most people you know, they go, oh, well, you know, there's a fund drive pitch going on. I think I'll go make a sandwich, or time to use the bathroom. You know, but it's not time to pick up the phone and, you know, participate. Well, it needs to be. We're way behind, and we need your help. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. And, you know, there are some premiums with certain contribution levels with a $20 gift. We've got this Free Speech TV 3x8-inch clear window sticker. With a $60 gift, you get a Tag Your It coffee mug with my picture on it, for better or for worse. Wasn't my idea. With a $72 gift, you get the 2008 edition of my book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. This is new and improved, and in fact, there's probably about that much new material in it that, you know, it's a good chunk. It was about 20% of the whole book got changed to update all the climate change stuff, and this is a great gift for the holidays. If you know anybody who has any interest at all in climate change and sociology and anthropology and history, in democracy, and I mean, just all kinds of topics are covered in this book, all within the wrap of you know, ancient sunlight being fossil fuels. And it's only the second book that's been endorsed by God in the last 2,000 years. 2,000 years ago, in the New Testament, God endorsed the Old Testament, right? And back, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, in Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh's book, God says, you need to read The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight if you want to know what's going on with climate change and things. And it was so cool that we issued a news release. You know, God has endorsed a book for the second time in history. So, you know, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but, you know, it's a true story. I don't know that it's actually God, but in any case, that's with the $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt and a sticker. That could be $10 a month for a year. With a $240 gift, Louise and I are putting together a webinar. We're going to do this online and live, and we're going to be talking about how NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, I'm not only trained as an NLP practitioner, but also as an NLP trainer. Louise is trained as an NLP practitioner, as I recall, or master practitioner, I guess it is. You know, we've written books about NLP, NLP and its application to ADHD. That book is called Healing ADD. My book on NLP and trauma is called Walking Your Blues Away, and my book on NLP and political communication is called Cracking the Code. So we've been in this stuff for a long time, and it's going to be a fascinating webinar, $240. Talks about communication and interpersonal relations and business and all kinds of things. With a $360 gift, you get 5 books: The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, The Thom Hartmann Reader, and Rebooting the American Dream, all by me, and Greg Palast's The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. With a $480 gift, you get everything that I've mentioned. You know, the sticker, the T-shirt, the mug, the Tag Your It coffee mug, the Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, the Thom Hartmann Reader, Rebooting the American Dream, Best Democracy Money Can Buy. I mean, this is the kitchen sink, $480. Or $40 a month for a year. And with $1,000, come to Portland, Oregon here, and you can watch the last hour of the show, and I'll take you to lunch. There's a nice restaurant right down the street that treats us very well and has great food. And it's always a fascinating time. I've just met some extraordinary people. I've learned a lot, and it's nice just getting to know the people who support Free Speech TV. So please call now, 877-378-8669. This is real. Free Speech TV really needs your help right now. It's a very, very critical time for this network. The political year last year and in through this year, you know, with the elections coming up, has been a real challenge, because a lot of people give their money to political causes rather than to Free Speech TV. We really need your help. 877-378-8669. Thank you so much for your help.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and let's pick up some of your phone calls, see what's on your mind today. Dan in Zion, Illinois. Hey, Dan, what's up?
Good afternoon, Tom. God bless you for the work that you do.
Thank you, sir.
You were talking about suicide in the population when Republicans are in office.
Yes.
You posited the idea years ago when I was listening to your show that when white men can't take care of their families, they turn to guns and violence. I don't know if you remember that at all. I want to put forward to you that two different experiences in America. I am a black man, 54 years of age, and the white experience, two entirely different experiences. The idea that I want to put forward is that these people have convinced white people of the story that they're telling, and they've done it through racism. As long as they apparently preserve white first-class citizenship, these people vote for these people to their own economic and social, I would put forth, detriment.
Yep.
I think Disneyland worked as well as it did because largely white people attend Disneyland. Black people, for the most part, didn't have the money because of employment and social displacement to attend those places. White people love a show. Donald Trump is a show. That's all he is. When you put that man up against the previous president, it's not a contention at all within the course of conversation who is a good man, who is a bad man in any respect. Lastly, Tom, I want to put forward, I don't know if you've heard about, I forget what state it's in. I thought it was Florida. They're attempting to do away with the 3 strikes law for people who have gone to jail for like drugs and whatnot.
Right.
I'm of the opinion that they're doing that now because white people, white men and white women are going to jail in droves.
Yep.
Because of opioids, and they will run out of people to vote for them if they don't do something about it.
Well, I don't think it's that they'll run out of people to vote for them. I think it's just that, Republican politicians don't like, they cheer when these kinds of things happen to minorities. They don't like it when they happen to white people. And,
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing with the economy. I mean, the story about the economy, the middle class being hollowed out and all this, yeah, there is a substantial black middle class, and they're being hurt just like the white middle class. In fact, worse in many regards. But the fact of the matter is that, white privilege and all this, the white middle class and even the white poor class have been pretty good off for years and years and years. And you didn't hear the media screaming about the economy until white people started getting hit. Black people have been in an economic depression basically for 500 years on this continent, or 400 and however many years it's been. So, yeah, there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, Dan. What do we do about it?
The only thing we can do is what we did a month or so ago. I think when it gets bad enough, just like it did in 2008, they were scared enough to vote for President Obama. We did the right thing almost a month ago, and we have to keep right on doing what we're doing. That's all. Yeah,
Bush created a mess, and so we hired a black guy to clean up the mess, right? I mean, it's like...
And we're going right back to where we were just before the black guy took over. It's crazy. Tom, thank you for your time. I appreciate you. God bless you.
Thank you, Dan. Good talking to you, and I'll take all the blessings I can get. Tracy in Gig Harbor, Washington. Hey, Tracy, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Hey, I didn't expect to get through today, but I'm talking about student debt, which is very timely. I got a panicked phone call yesterday from my daughter, who graduated from an Ivy League college back about 6 years ago. And she got a letter, and it's like, you need to pay this amount of money now, and she was just panicked. And so basically my question is, how do I help? And I would appreciate it if you could repeat that website that you spoke of earlier, because, I don't know what to do. My day was going to be trying to help her figure this out, and then your show came on, and that's what you were talking about.
Yeah,
I got through to you.
Yeah, this is the guy who was in charge of making sure that student loans were... not scams. His name is Seth Frothman, Sethfrothman. F-R-O-T-M-A-N, Frotman, excuse me, F-R-O-T-M-A-N. And his new organization is called the Student Borrower Protection Center.
Okay.
So
Great, because
and
I'm sure I'm not the only one. You know.
He just rolled this out today. In fact, he was on TV this morning on one of the networks
Really?
talking about this. Yeah. So
Okay, great. Because just what she told me about the place, it just sounded scammy and not right, and
Yeah.
I just yeah.
well,
So
tragically in 2005. I mean, this really took off in really just in the last 15 or 20 years. And a large part of it was because in 2005, the Bankruptcy Reform Act of 2005 said that you can no longer declare bankruptcy on student debt. And, as soon as that happened, all of a sudden the banksters got into the business really fast. In fact, some schools even got into the business. They like GM, you can finance your own car through GM, through the GM's banking division. There's like schools were starting to do this. And this is crazy. This is just crazy.
Yeah.
So, Tracy, good
It's
luck.
madness.
Let us know how it works
Thank you.
out.
Thank you very much. And
Sure.
thank you for all you do.
My
All
pleasure.
right.
Good
Bye.
talking to you, Tracy. Thanks. Michael in Snohomish, Washington. Hey, Michael, what's up?
Yeah, I was wondering, where does all the money that the post office has to put away for its future retirees, where does it go? And
It is invested in
controls-
treasuries right now. They are loaning that money to the federal government to provide tax cuts to billionaires.
Yeah, I was wondering who controls it, and is it all still there?
It is. It's controlled under the law that the Republicans passed, and it's all still there. In fact, it's been growing because we're paying interest on it, and and it's in a special account that the post office doesn't have access to for 75 years. This was just a cynical attack on the post office by conservative lawmakers, who were acting on behalf of FedEx and UPS. In my opinion.
Completely agree.
Yeah. Michael, thank you for the call. It's pretty awful stuff. Is it Nevin or Neven in Boca Raton, Florida?
Oh, it's Nevin. How
Nevin.
you doing, Tom?
I'm well. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Two things. I listened to your show yesterday, part of your show, I believe it was yesterday, and then a little bit this morning, and you were talking about the Americans for Prosperity and their lobbying apparatus and their sheer power and whatnot. And I would like to see, of course, when populists take both houses and the presidency, one of the things they should do, in my opinion at least, is relaunch a Buchanan Committee 2.0. And I'm sure you remember the Buchanan Committee from the 40s and early 50s looked into the corporate so-called free market political groups that wanted to destroy stakeholder capitalism in the wake of World War II. And I think it's high time that really they need to be unmasked for a variety of different reasons. And the other, of course, item on my wish list is to create a committee to de-Reaganize the economy, to look through historically through every act of deregulation from Reagan until Trump and just literally reverse it.
Yeah.
And
come up
reverse
with a
course.
punch list and provide it to an incoming president. When George W. Bush came into the White House, and, I'm guessing that they did this for Trump, but I think he probably ignored it. But when George W. Bush came into the White House, the Heritage Foundation and several other right-wing think tanks presented him with, here's a 30-point plan, a 50-point plan, 300 things that need to be done in the first year, whatever. And the Bush administration was pretty good about just going through and checking off the boxes, because they needed the right-wing foundation and think tanks' help to get reelected. And a lot of those things, some of them were things that actually did need to get done, but the vast majority of them were just, adding to the ways that wealth is transferred to wealthy families and big corporations. And I would love for for a progressive think tank, and there's several of them out there. They're small and they're poorly funded, but they're there. I would love to see a progressive think tank, come up with a punch list for the 2020 incoming Democratic president. And I think there's going to be one. I'm very hopeful that there will be one, and I think that there will be. And say here, and I think that what you're just suggesting here, Nevin, is a perfect start. How do we de-Reaganize the economy? How do we de-Reaganize our politics? And what are the specific laws that have been passed that should be repealed? What are the things that we need to be doing? Excellent suggestion. Nevin, thanks a lot for the call. Chris in Palatine, Illinois. Hey, Chris, what's up?
Yes, Tom. Now, I've only heard a little bit of your conversation about Medicare Advantage, but I do want to talk about my experiences with it. I'm a year and a half older than you are. You know, I was born in January 1950. I had past tense, fortunately, liver cancer.
Ouch.
I had a tumor removed from my liver less than 2 months ago. Before that, I had a biopsy to confirm that. But to give you an example, I'm in Medicare Advantage with Blue Cross Blue Shield. I have my cost is no more than the Medicare Part B, the normal $135 a month.
Right.
That they deduct from
because I, as a taxpayer, am picking up the balance of the expenses for you.
Well, possibly.
No, we're subsidizing Blue Cross Blue Shield in this. When the procedures that you had, Chris, to cure your cancer, generated substantial costs for Blue Cross Blue Shield. They, in turn, submitted a bill to the federal government for those costs plus their markup, and that got paid. Medicare Advantage in many areas where you've got strong networks that like Blue Cross Blue Shield has had in the Midwest for forever. I mean, when I ran business,
every major hospital and doctor,
right? Everybody takes it
in the Chicago area.
Yeah,
takes Blue Cross.
Yeah. I was just saying, growing up in Michigan, I ran 3 businesses in Michigan before Louise and I moved out of the state, and we always used Blue Cross as our health insurance company. Although at that time they were required by law to be a nonprofit. I don't know if they still are in Michigan or not, but in most places they've become for-profits. But the point isn't whether Medicare Advantage benefits you as a consumer. The problem is that it is damaging Medicare itself.
My cost. For my biopsy, I haven't gotten the cost yet. I was in the hospital for 6 days, so I'm not sure what my cost would be. The list price would be, but it'd be probably in excess of $100,000. My cost, based on the plan, would be my nightly medical coverage for hospital stay, which would be $225 a night.
Right.
And that, by the way, I was in the operating room for 6 hours.
No, but the details of what you experienced, Chris, are not what I'm talking about here, and they're not really relevant to this conversation unless you're calling to promote Medicare Advantage. Some Medicare Advantage plans are a good deal for consumers because of these federal subsidies. We're throwing more and more money at these big insurance companies, be they Blue Cross or be they United Healthcare or whatever. And in those places where there's a good network, yeah, you can get more stuff with Medicare Advantage, and that's. And the reason why the Trump administration is promoting this, why Seema Verma, the administrator of Medicare, is actually promoting this, is because it's killing Medicare. If right now about a third of people on Medicare are on Medicare Advantage. If this flips and it becomes 2/3, it's probably going to kill Medicare altogether. And when that happens, Medicare Advantage is going to start to get really, really sketchy because it's no longer a government program. It'll be just like private health insurance, and that's a bad thing for all of us. So, Chris, I'm happy that you had a good experience. I'm warning you, not you personally, but I'm warning all of us. Medicare Advantage is going to kill Medicare if it continues on this path, and that's the goal. That's exactly what Blue Cross and United Healthcare want. Hey, let's run a good program for a while that we make maybe a little less money on. We're still making a good profit in order to get people away from the government-sponsored program, and then we can kill the government-sponsored program, and then we can start really screwing people the good old-fashioned way, like we were like they do with regular customers right now.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archive.
And certainly the way that they screw regular customers, or screwed before Obamacare said, hey, wait a minute, you can't do that anymore. They would just want to go back to that. And welcome back. David in Seattle. Hey, David, what's up?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, hi, thank you. This is my first time calling you. I just wanted to say I really enjoy listening to your show, and I keep having conversations with you and your callers every time I listen to something of substance.
Thank you.
I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit and see if you could put a spin on my question about the shadow times that we are facing right now. A friend of mine who is an artist and ended up being a Trump supporter, he asked me, a Bernie supporter, what the effect of Trump would be on our country after the election. And I paused for a long time, and then I said, well, win or lose, I think Trump is going to be a big teacher for all of us. And after the election, and listening to your show, I can't help but see that if you think of the country as a person, you understand that this is the time of the shadow, and that we are not going to mature as individuals or an entire country unless we face the darkness of our shadow, collective shadow, and the brutality we've visited on people of our own people,
Yes.
And elsewhere. So I was wondering, since you've been a counselor, could you do a riff on that?
Well, I think that's what we're confronting as a country right now, David. Is Trump is our shadow. It's the impulse. I was going to say instinct. It's not really an instinct. I think it's an impulse. The impulse to lie, the impulse to cheat, the impulse to steal. These are things that most of us, understood as children were wrong and inappropriate, and by and large throughout our lives have avoided. Donald Trump has made them basically the core of his existence, apparently since childhood. The Republican Party, since the Reagan era, has flipped itself to be the party of the billionaires and the corporations, and they have necessarily, if that's what you're going to do, and you want people to elect you to office, to give you political power, you have to lie to those people. So the Republican Party has become, at its core, built on a foundation of lies. Fox News, you've got an entire ecosystem of right-wing media. Fox News, right-wing hate radio, they're by and large based on a foundation of lies. And so, if that's the shadow that you're talking about, I think as more and more we're having conversations about that shadow, it's getting really clear. It's the point I made yesterday with one of our guests who was had written a book about the media, and it was like last year CNN, or this year's just wrapping up, the last 12 months, CNN made one mistake, one factual error. They corrected it the same day. Fox News and Donald Trump and the Republican Party complained about that error for at least 3 weeks, that CNN had made one mistake all year. Media Matters every single day documents lies on Fox News, literally every day. The Washington Post every single day documents lies by Donald Trump, every single day, typically 6 to 15 lies a day. And when we're behaving like there's some kind of an equivalence, CNN told one lie a year, Fox News tells, one lie an hour, that's not equivalent. Is that the riff you wanted, David?
Yeah, it's more of a Jungian kind of thing I was referring to. Having gone through a lot of counseling in the last 4 years, I think it's like shining a spotlight on the things I do to myself, and then what I can do to change my own energy, and I impact other people that way. So we're not going to grow as individuals.
I agree, and it has altered the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times, in a very, very negative way, and I think that's one of the things that's contributing to this jump in suicides that we're seeing. David, thank you for the call. It's great talking with you. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Wayne in Charleston, New Hampshire. Hey, Wayne, what's up?
I just felt I'd call you and disagree about the 35,000 figure on suicides.
Okay.
I'm a 75-year-old man. I come from the state of New Hampshire. We have a Republican governor who gained a big tax break for his interest in ski areas. Mm-hmm. We have a Republican-run legislature who goes along with them. They're cutting school funding 3% a year, so it reverts back to the local property tax payer, which New Hampshire is dependent on.
Right.
So it raises the taxes on all the elderly that are trying to stay in their homes.
Yep.
Who are having a very hard time doing this.
Yep.
So therefore, you get forced out of your home, and they put you in these so-called senior citizen homes. And it's something like a 3-year wait. And to me, it's like a giant pigeon coop.
Wow.
You don't get breaks on your taxpayer as a senior taxpayer according to your income or anything. And it would be much better for seniors to stay in their homes rather than go in these so-called retirement places.
Right.
New Hampshire tries to present itself as a utopia. It's not. It's very high cost of living. We have the second highest per capita property taxes in the country.
Right, because you have no income tax.
Rates are right up there, too.
Yeah.
Transportation costs, everything. Now, I submit to you that I know from friends of mine who have had to sell their homes, which is I'm not too far from having to do, because you can't afford the property taxes and the cost of living anymore, and you're going to have to face a 3-year wait for a retirement home in a senior center. So I would submit to you that I know a lot of people, I think, cut on their medications and out of pure depression died before their time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that is something I think you should take into consideration with all your facts and figures. And Tom, I watch your show religiously, and very seldom do I disagree with you. But something has got to be done in this country to help the elderly.
I absolutely agree.
To raise Social Security, and if they don't, well, I guess they're just, kicking us off in the ditch.
We need to, well, Bernie Sanders campaigned on this pretty aggressively, and now it's being picked up by a lot of Democrats. The consumer price index that is used to measure inflation, that is also used to calculate cost of living adjustments, the COLAs, the Social Security cost of living adjustments. That is, what that shows is that as computers get more powerful and less expensive, that inflation has gone down. And that will balance out the inflation that has gone up in medication, in food, and in transportation. But seniors, by and large, you buy one computer, how many do you need? You're not buying a new iPhone every year and all this kind of stuff. There's all kinds of things that are variables that are unique to people who are retired that are quite different from people in their 20s and 30s. We need a consumer price index that reflects the actual cost of living as a retiree. And that should be the one that is applied to Social Security. And there actually is such a number. It's just that the law has not been changed to force Social Security to use that number, because it would cause Social Security COLAs to go up more rapidly. But I think, Wayne, you have absolutely put your finger on something, and I think that some of these suicides that we're seeing increasing, and just like the suicides in the UK and Australia during conservative rule, some of these suicides are people who are experiencing despair out of situations like you yourself just described. And in other cases, you're right, people are cutting their pills. The United States doesn't have the longest lifespan in the developed world. In fact, we're close to the bottom in terms of lifespan. And in large part, that's, in my opinion, that's because of Reaganomics, and the damage it has done to us. And we're the only country that doesn't provide health care for free to everybody, or at very, very low cost, and or free if you can't afford it. So, every other developed country, every other OECD country does. So, yeah, Wayne, I can't disagree with anything you said. Thank you so much for the call and for sharing your story with us. It's a tough one. America is getting to be a tough place to live for white people, and for a long time has been a tough place to live for people of color. And, we need to do something about this. We need to fundamentally fix both our politics and our economics. We'll be back right after this. Matt Taibbi's going to be with us. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
with a $20 contribution, and $20 may not sound like a lot of money, but you know, to Free Speech TV, actually it is. This is an entire television network that runs on a little tiny budget. For the $20 contribution, you get a Free Speech TV sticker, 3x8 clear window with a logo of Free Speech TV. Please call now. Hey, we really need your help right now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. You've heard me say it a lot. It's probably on your screen. The Free Speech TV, if you want this network to keep running, to keep going, I mean, you know, probably 2 failed fundraising drives, and we're going to wrap it up. I mean, that's how important this is. This is the principal source of funding for this television network is you and people like you. And, you know, I get it that some people it's tight, they can't afford it. You know, I understand that. I'm not asking for anybody to contribute money if they can't afford to. But I also know, and just from the years that I listened to public radio and only occasionally called in and made a contribution, that most people, you know, they go, oh, well, you know, there's a fund drive pitch going on. I think I'll go make a sandwich, or time to use the bathroom. You know, but it's not time to pick up the phone and, you know, participate. Well, it needs to be. We're way behind, and we need your help. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. And, you know, there are some premiums with certain contribution levels with a $20 gift. We've got this Free Speech TV 3x8-inch clear window sticker. With a $60 gift, you get a Tag You're It coffee mug with my picture on it, for better or for worse. Wasn't my idea. With a $72 gift, you get the 2008 edition of my book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. This is new and improved, and in fact, there's probably about that much new material in it that, you know, it's a good chunk. It was about 20% of the whole book got changed to update all the climate change stuff, and this is a great gift for the holidays. If you know anybody who has any interest at all in climate change and sociology and anthropology and history, in democracy, and I mean, just all kinds of topics are covered in this book, all within the wrap of you know, ancient sunlight being fossil fuels. And it's only the second book that's been endorsed by God in the last 2,000 years. 2,000 years ago, in the New Testament, God endorsed the Old Testament, right? And back, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, in Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh's book, God says, you need to read The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight if you want to know what's going on with climate change and things. And it was so cool that we issued a news release. You know, God has endorsed a book for the second time in history. So, you know, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but, you know, it's a true story. I don't know that it's actually God, but in any case, that's with the $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt and a sticker. That could be $10 a month for a year. With a $240 gift, Louise and I are putting together a webinar. We're going to do this online and live, and we're going to be talking about how NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, I'm not only trained as an NLP practitioner, but also as an NLP trainer. Louise is trained as an NLP practitioner, as I recall, or master practitioner, I guess it is. You know, we've written books about NLP, NLP and its application to ADHD. That book is called Healing ADD. My book on NLP and trauma is called Walking Your Blues Away, and my book on NLP and political communication is called Cracking the Code. So we've been in this stuff for a long time, and it's going to be a fascinating webinar, $240. Talks about communication and interpersonal relations and business and all kinds of things. With a $360 gift, you get 5 books: The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, The Thom Hartmann Reader, and Rebooting the American Dream, all by me, and Greg Palast's The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. With a $480 gift, you get everything that I've mentioned. You know, the sticker, the T-shirt, the mug, the Tag Your Coffee mug, the Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, the Thom Hartmann Reader, Rebooting the American Dream, best democracy money can buy. I mean, this is the kitchen sink, $480. Or $40 a month for a year. And with $1,000, come to Portland, Oregon here, and you can watch the last hour of the show, and I'll take you to lunch. There's a nice restaurant right down the street that treats us very well and has great food. And it's always a fascinating time. I've just met some extraordinary people. I've learned a lot, and it's nice just getting to know the people who support Free Speech TV. So please call now, 877-378-8669. This is real. Free Speech TV really needs your help right now. It's a very, very critical time for this network. The political year last year and in through this year, you know, with the elections coming up, has been a real challenge because a lot of people give their money to political causes rather than to Free Speech TV. We really need your help. 877-378-8669. Thank you so much for your help.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
It does go forward. The United States came out and more efficiently organized nation, as Roosevelt suggested. The process of mobilizing
the show
resources.
Online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Economic reforms of the New Deal.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back to the second hour of our program. If you're just tuning in the previous hour, we were talking about the economy, the yield curve inverted yesterday on treasuries. I'll get into that a little more later on, just to kind of recap that. And what that means, typically that means recession, depression. God only knows. Speaking of depression, we also talked about how suicide is up in the United States, tragically. In fact, it's up more than 50% since 2009, the last year of the Clinton presidency. And what we're seeing, in my opinion, is Reaganomics setting in, and it's killing us. I was quoting from a 2002 article in the BBC titled "More Suicides Under Conservative Rule." They looked at 100 years of British and Australian suicide rates, and they found that, well, to quote the BBC, the figures clearly showed the highest rates of suicide occurred when both conservative state and federal governments were in power. And they continue with that. So we'll get back to some of those things. There's a lot of other news on the list for the day. And right now, Matt Taibbi is with us, contributing editor to Rolling Stone magazine, the author of 5 books, including his latest, Hate Incorporated: How and Why the Press Makes Us Hate One Another. Taibbi.substack.com is the website. You can tweet at mtaibbi, M-T-A-I-B-B-I. Matt, welcome back to the program. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. How's it going, Tom?
Very good, thank you. I'm so pleased that you have a new book out, and I'm looking forward to reading it. Can you give us the summary of it, please?
Yeah, so it started off as sort of a rethink of manufacturing consent. I even went down to interview Noam Chomsky. That's in the introduction, because I felt like I needed to have his blessing to do this project. But it's morphed into something that's more of a confessional about modern reporting techniques and how we're incentivized to sort of monetize divisions within society, and especially focusing on campaign journalism. So it's really about how campaign reporting is messed up and all the little deceptions in that world, and how it drives people to hate each other more than they probably would normally.
I went off on a rant yesterday about how news has changed. I started in the news business, a long time ago.
I think we both did.
Yeah. Well, in my case, it was in 1968. I got a job as a DJ in Lansing, Michigan, and in '71 I moved to news, and I did that until '76 or '78. And if we had a news block to fill, we had a series of news stories, and what we're seeing now is the panelization of news. It's the reality TV comes to news. And so instead of having, an hour to report and doing like BBC or France 24 does, where, in that hour there'll be literally 20 different stories with some, in-depth perspective. There'll be 3 or 4 stories for the hour, and each one of those stories will then provoke a 15-minute panel discussion with 3, quote, not even experts, 3 pundits. And it's super cheap to produce, right? And that's why they're doing it. But it's like we're being fed Hostess Twinkies instead of nutritious food with regard to news. Is that the sort of thing that you're talking about, or have you identified something completely different that I'm missing?
No, definitely. I write about that a lot, and there were huge changes within the business that you talked about some of it. Some of it had to do with the launching of the 24-hour news cycle with CNN, and this incentivized people in the news business financially to drift towards, instead of doing what you were talking about, sort of individually packaged news reports that had some research behind them, suddenly news executives were looking more for stories that had a breaking or a visual element, and where you could just sit around and have a bunch of people discussing something as it happened.
Right.
And that was the cheapest way to eat up those oceans of time, but it also led to this sort of reality show element that you talk about. And one of the stories that lent itself in the worst way to that format was the campaign story, because it's 2 years of scheduled contests that you can essentially just talk about in the same way you do with sports radio. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the reasons why the political dialogue has been so degraded since a lot of these changes in the business.
Well, and one dimension of this is that in sports, basically you're not having a conversation about what the rules of the game should be, because they're set. They don't change from day to day. So it's basically, there's no discussion about legislation, essentially, about how the NFL should change its policies. It's a discussion about, how's this running back doing, or, how's that quarterback doing, or, did he injure himself this week, those kind of things. And in politics, we really need to have conversations about this candidate stands for this issue or this set of issues, and here are the consequences of these issues and how they will affect you, and here's how the rules could actually change as a consequence of this person getting elected. And we almost, and we used to, by the way, talk about politics that way. Like I said, I started news, what is that, almost 50 years ago. We used to talk about news that way. We don't anymore. Now it's all about personality. It is, as you say, as if it's sports. What do we do about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a major problem because, again, this has to do with the financial aspect of it and the incentives. It's too difficult and sometimes off-putting to your target audiences if you get too deep into issues. So it's much simpler to simply cover it exactly the way we cover sports, which is to have a couple of teams and to talk about which team is going to win and which team isn't, and you invest heavily in all the gibberish that surrounds the contest and the horse race.
Right, the polling.
That's why the polling, the magic wall that John King has, all of the fanfare that goes with who's going to win? What's
right. It's the Super Bowl
saying today. It's the Super Bowl. It's Super Tuesday. We even use the same words. There's literally like a magic number for the delegates. Mm-hmm. Which is the same as the magic number to clinch the pennant. We have the road to 270. We have all these things that completely borrow from the live variety format of sports programming, and again, it's just completely degraded the conversation.
So before I ask you how we fix this, one last quick question here, Matt Taibbi. Your new book, Hate Incorporated, or Hate Inc., where does the hate come into this?
Well, I think one of the things that's happened is that is that the TV and well, the entire news business really learned a lot from the experience of the crossfire format. You know, when cable news in the 80s began to kind of sell the idea of political combat and the argument. Gladiators, right? And one of the underlying sort of concepts that animates that television show was that you could never have a resolution. The show doesn't work if people come to any kind of agreement or if they enlighten each other. It has to be ongoing, endless, relentless combat. And you even see ridiculous things like Paul Begala and Tucker Carlson being introduced with boxing gloves on before they do get out. And this sort of leaves people with the impression that they're rooting, not thinking. You know, when they talk about politics, and I think that spread to the entire business. And it began really with Fox News that kind of targeted one particular demographic, and essentially turned into an ongoing pep rally for a certain kind of politics. But I think it spread to the entire media landscape at this point, and we don't have that kind of meta conversation about politics for everybody anymore, and I think that's unfortunate.
So Matt, how do we? I mean, there's a few solutions, I suppose, that are relatively obvious. Reapplying the Sherman Antitrust Act to the media in the United States. Breaking up some of the big media, going back to ownership rules like we had before the Telecommunications Act of '96. This would atomize much of this, but that's not going to affect CNN. I mean, do you have any solution? Do you have solutions to this? Suggestions? Ideas?
Well, I mean, I think we have to go back a little bit to the public interest standard. I mean, the original Communications Act in 1934. Right. Essentially, it was a trade-off. What they said was you can lease the public airwaves, but in exchange, and you can make money doing entertainment and sports and all that other stuff. But news, you have to do something in the public interest, and it was always sort of understood tacitly, and I guess in your generation, maybe my father's generation, he was in the news as well, that the news could be a loss leader.
Oh, it was. It was. Yeah. When I worked at Whittle in Lansing, we had 5 or 6 people in the newsroom, and they absolutely lost money. And by the way, I would have lost my job if I had been caught talking, even just casually in the hallway, talking with any of the salespeople. There was an absolute firewall between sales and news.
Yeah, that's another major difference. I mean, you hear stories about the salespeople not even being allowed on the same floor as the editorial.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. Yeah. We avoided each other.
Yeah, and that's completely different. Now the salespeople more or less completely dictate the editorial.
They're suggesting stories. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So you're saying that if we brought back the Fairness Doctrine, which did not say that if you have an hour of Thom Hartmann, you have to have an hour of Rush Limbaugh. Instead, what it said is if the station itself offers an editorial, they have to provide an identical amount of time for a rebuttal from the opposite side. And the station must program in the public interest, which was broadly understood not just to mean public service announcements, but also to mean a minute of the news or 5 minutes of news at the top of every hour. Just going back to that fundamental principle that Reagan blew up in '87 and that Obama finally took off the books 2 years ago. Is that your main suggestion?
I think that's one of them. I mean, I think another one is that news companies should. I think they have a lot of misconceptions about what does and doesn't sell. Right. In my own career, what I found is, there were, like, for instance, I covered the financial services industry a lot, and I continually heard from people, you can't do complicated. Complicated doesn't work, in modern media. But actually, if you don't talk down to audiences, they actually dig it. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that major media companies have to understand is that they have preconceptions about what's commercial and what isn't that are wrong, and they need to test those more often.
That's a great point, and you can jazz it up a little bit by talking about giant squids. Exactly. Matt Taibbi, the great Matt Taibbi, contributing editor to Rolling Stone magazine, the author of 5 books. His latest is Hate Incorporated: How and Why the Press Makes Us Hate Each Other or Hate One Another. Matt, thanks so much for dropping by today. Good luck with the book.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Take care.
Good talking with you. We'll be right back. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. And welcome back. Joan in Nashville, Tennessee. Hey, Joan, what's on your mind today? Thanks for watching us on Free Speech. Hi, Joan.
I'm not going to go into all the whys and wherefores because we all know that. But what I'd like to speak to is, what we can do to change things.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, and I keep going back to whites because whites are the ones who are in control. Whites are the ones at the decision table and not black people. And until whites realize the game that their rich white cousins have played on them and continue to play on them, nothing is going to change.
Yep.
And the only way that's going to change is that whites are going to have to become more introspective. And I know that's hard to do, but it has to be done.
Well, wouldn't it,
and I'm thinking,
Joan, if I could just interrupt for a second, where I thought you were going with this is, wouldn't it be a good idea if the white middle and underclass were to stop thinking of themselves as principally white people and start thinking of themselves as principally a particular economic and social class? In other words, replace race consciousness with class consciousness. This is what Republicans do not want to happen, and it's why they're constantly talking about race consciousness. And the Democrats would like to see this happen. It's one of the reasons they are constantly talking about economics and class. Wouldn't that get us a long way toward what you're talking about?
Yes, I agree with you 100%. But the problem is that black African Americans have always known this. Right. That if you're white and you're hungry, your stomach is going to hurt. It doesn't matter what color your stomach is. If it isn't being properly fed, it's going to hurt. Now, black people understand this. It's whites who don't understand it. And I was just getting ready to mention the book entitled Hillbilly Elegy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the author's name. But whenever I see him on TV, he's upset because he cannot understand why black people seem not to have compassion and empathy for poor whites and middle-class whites who are suffering. Well, we always have. It's the whites who resist that from us. Whites want from us what we've been trying to give them, which is compassion and empathy, because we realize that we are all human. It's whites who cannot see beyond the color.
Yeah.
It's not black people.
Yeah.
We are here to help you all, but we can't do it for you.
Well,
and until whites realize that they have not given black people anything that we haven't earned, and as long as they listen to their rich white cousins and who tell them that having white skin, which, if you look at it biologically, is an impairment, and as long as whites can believe that their white skin makes them special and above, then, it's on you all. I'm sorry, I don't see it any other way.
No, I get it, I completely agree with you, Joan. What the wealthy white cousins are saying to the average white is, that whiteness is really important, and you've got to preserve that white privilege, and these black people want to take it away from you. And, thus this bizarre conversation that we're having that the Republicans are driving. But, Joan, you are absolutely right. Thank you so much for the call. Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive. And so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. And of course, you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive. And in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $72 contribution, you get the new edition. We spent, Troy Miller and I spent a year and a half going through all the research and updating everything and getting this thing exactly right with all the new climate change information, the last hours of ancient sunlight. That's with a $72 contribution, autographed by the author.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook.
So, just to recap, and I think it's an entirely important and appropriate thing to recap some of the stuff we talked about the previous hour, and then I've got a lot of things to add to it. The BBC in 2002 published a news story under the headline "More Suicides Under Conservative Rule." This is 18 September 2002. And I'm just reading from the story. This is a news story. This is not an op-ed. The suicide rate increases under conservative governments, research suggests. The Australian team analyzed suicides between 1901, which is when the Australian federal government was created, and 1998. They took into account periods of drought and World War II. After adjusting for these factors, the figures clearly showed the highest rates of suicide occurred when both conservative state and federal governments were in power. Conversely, the lowest rates of suicide occurred when state and federal governments were both liberal. Middle-aged and older people were most at risk. When the conservatives ruled both state and federal governments, men were 17% more likely to commit suicide than when Labor was in power. Women were 40% more likely to kill themselves. And then they wrap it up by saying, overall, the researchers say the figures suggest that 35,000 people would not have died had the conservatives never been in power. Which is pretty breathtaking, right? And then I was pointing out all this corruption that we have in the United States. Now, Seth Frotman has just left the CFPB to start his own Student Borrower Protection Center because the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is supposed to protect you if you have a student loan, under Mick Mulvaney, this corrupt Trump puppet, they are just killing off these protections. And this is a $1.5 trillion business. And you've got student loans are defaulting right now at the rate of 1 every 28 seconds. Student loan debt is growing faster than loans, auto loans. It's growing faster than home mortgages. It's growing faster than credit card balances. And what is this doing? Not just the student loan, but the student loan, the increased cost of living, the increased costs of medication, all these other things. It's causing Americans to die. Life expectancy in the United States declined from 2016 to 2017, and the leading cause of this was suicide. The drug overdoses were up there too, but suicide rate increased just in 1 year, 2016 to 2017, increased 3.7% nationwide. And I mean, this is huge. When you compare right now, 2017, last year, to 1999, the last year of the Clinton presidency. In the last year of the Clinton presidency, you had here's the percentage. It's easiest just to understand. Among men, it went up 34%. Among women, it went up 53%, the suicide rate, from 1999 to last year. And the group that's most likely to commit suicide, people 45 to 64. Why is this? Well, there's an economic connection to it. And as our economy has been just decimated, just devastated, destroyed by, we'll be right back here. Stick around. Hey, we really need your help right now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. You've heard me say it a lot. It's probably on your screen. The Free Speech TV, if you want this network to keep running, to keep going, I mean, probably 2 failed fundraising drives, and we're going to wrap it up. I mean, that's how important this is. This is the principal source of funding for this television network is you. and people like you. And, you know, I get it that some people it's tight, they can't afford it. You know, I understand that. I'm not asking for anybody to contribute money if they can't afford to. But I also know, and just from the years that I listened to public radio and only occasionally called in and made a contribution, that most people, you know, they go, oh, well, you know, there's a fund drive pitch going on. I think I'll go make a sandwich, or time to use the bathroom. You know, but it's not time to pick up the phone and, you know, participate. Well, it needs to be. We're way behind, and we need your help. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. And, you know, there are some premiums with certain contribution levels with a $20 gift. We've got this Free Speech TV 3x8-inch clear window sticker. With a $60 gift, you get a Tag Your It coffee mug with my picture on it, for better or for worse. Wasn't my idea. With a $72 gift, you get the 2008 edition of my book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. This is new and improved, and in fact, there's probably about that much new material in it that, you know, it's a good chunk. It was about 20% of the whole book got changed to update all the climate change stuff, and this is a great gift for the holidays. If you know anybody who has any interest at all in climate change and sociology and anthropology and history, in democracy, I mean, just all kinds of topics are covered in this book, all within the wrap of you know, ancient sunlight being fossil fuels. And it's only the second book that's been endorsed by God in the last 2,000 years. 2,000 years ago, in the New Testament, God endorsed the Old Testament, right? And back, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, in Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh's book, God says, you need to read The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight if you want to know what's going on with climate change and things. And it was so cool that we issued a news release. You know, God has endorsed a book for the second time in history. So, you know, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but, you know, it's a true story. I don't know that it's actually God, but in any case, that's with the $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt and a sticker. That could be $10 a month for a year. With a $240 gift, Louise and I are putting together a webinar. We're going to do this online and live, and we're going to be talking about how NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, I'm not only trained as an NLP practitioner, but also as an NLP trainer. Louise is trained as an NLP practitioner, as I recall, or master practitioner, I guess it is. You know, we've written books about NLP, NLP and its application to ADHD. That book is called Healing in ADD. My book on NLP and trauma is called Walking Your Blues Away, and my book on NLP and political communication is called Cracking the Code. So we've been in this stuff for a long time, and it's going to be a fascinating webinar, $240. Talks about communication and interpersonal relations and business and all kinds of things. With a $360 gift, you get 5 books: The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, The Thom Hartmann Reader, and Rebooting the American Dream, all by me, and Greg Palast's The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. With a $480 gift, you get everything that I've mentioned. You know, the sticker, the T-shirt, the mug, the Tag Your It coffee mug, the Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, the Thom Hartmann Reader, Rebooting the American Dream, Best Democracy Money Can Buy. I mean, this is the kitchen sink, $480. Or $40 a month for a year. And with $1,000, come to Portland, Oregon here, and you can watch the last hour of the show, and I'll take you to lunch. There's a nice restaurant right down the street that treats us very well and has great food. And it's always a fascinating time. I've just met some extraordinary people. I've learned a lot, and it's nice just getting to know the people who support Free Speech TV. So please call now, 877-378-8669. This is real. Free Speech TV really needs your help right now. It's a very, very critical time for this network. The political year last year and in through this year, with the elections coming up, has been a real challenge because a lot of people give their money to political causes rather than to free speech TV. We really need your help. 877-378-8669. Thank you so much for your help.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Sean in Stamford, Connecticut. Hey, Sean, what's on your mind today?
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Good. What's up?
Okay. Reason I called you, I want to talk about the interview you did with.
Oop. Sean appears to have dropped his own call. Tony in Huntsville, Alabama. Hey, Tony, what's on your mind today?
Tom, how you doing, my friend?
Good. What's up?
I want to know, if I want to start a news program, is there a standardized working definition of the word news? Or do I just get to say, it's Tony News, and then talk about anything?
Mm-hmm.
What's my responsibility if I say the word news?
I've seen many working definitions of news over the years, and including the old, probably apocryphal story that the word news itself comes from northeast, west, south. In other words, it's like, let's look all around us at all, everything that's going on. But generally speaking, I have considered the news to be those things that will directly or indirectly impact my life, my quality of life, and by extension, my country and the quality of life within my country, and also my role as a citizen of the world. So, I would obviously want to know about the immediate, things like, hey, my taxes are going up or down, or a new factory is opening down the street, or something like that. But I also would want to know about things like political corruption, and I would also want to know about things like, what's going on around the world. Like, for example, the Senate just heard testimony from Gina Haspel, the head of the CIA, about the Khashoggi murder. And Bob Corker, Republican senator, says we would have convicted Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince, in 30 minutes. A jury would convict him in 30 minutes. The evidence was so overwhelming. I think that that's news because it actually, it seems like it's way over on the other side of the world. It's a long way from here. He was murdered in Turkey. He was a Saudi citizen, although he was living in the United States. But I think it's news because it has to do with our being in bed with a despotic regime that murders journalists. And we're buying, I think, 8 or 9% of our oil from them, and stuff like that. So that's a fairly broad definition, but is it making sense, Tony?
I think it is, but my general question is, who regulates the word? I mean,
nobody.
I remember George Carlin did a comedy thing on the 7 words you can't say.
Right.
So if I say news, and then it's all about my opinions on stuff that really doesn't matter except to people that I'm trying to move in a certain direction, that's not news, that's manipulation.
Well, that's Fox News.
Fox
but there is no regulation. I mean, the Supreme Court has been very, very clear literally from the very beginning of the Republic that that political information and quote news are the last things that government may regulate. And so, to the best of my knowledge, there's never been any real serious effort to regulate the news outside of the Fairness Doctrine, which really wasn't regulating the news so much as it was demanding that if you have a broadcast license, you actually have to produce actual news. And most people know it when they see it.
That may be the problem, Tom. That you asked your guest what the problem was, and that in itself is the problem. If we can just say anything and it has nothing to do with facts or the common good, we can call it anything. But by using the word news, we give people the impression that we're giving them something that's useful when we're really not. We're just giving them stuff they can't use to manipulate them and sell them stuff. Yeah. And that's the problem.
Well,
that's the problem, Tom.
Yeah, I agree, Tony. And that's the really sad thing. I mean, I can watch 3 hours straight of CNN or MSNBC and probably Fox. I've never subjected myself to 3 hours consecutively of Fox. And basically the same 3 or 4 stories get recycled every hour with different commentators doing reality show news where they're sitting in a panel and commenting on things. And, as opposed to if I'm spending 3 hours watching the news, I'd really like to hear, 30, 40, 50 stories. I'd like to know what's going on in the world. I mean, in that period of time, or even in 1 hour, I should be able to find out not only what's going on, relatively locally, I should be able to find out what's going on nationally, I should be able to find out the larger dimensions of these things, and I should be able to find out what's going on around the world, at least the things that are consequential, the things that are going to affect me. And so, I think it's a big deal. Tony, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. It's a great question. Mark in Prairie du Sac, Wisconsin. Am I saying it right, Mark?
You're saying it right. It occurred to me that regardless of how Khashoggi's death came about, that even if it was just the prince making a comment like Henry II made about his, will somebody rid me of this troublesome monk, that his knights took it upon themselves to go and murder Thomas Becket. That the crown prince is responsible for this, and Saudi Arabia has to be held to account for it because he is Saudi Arabia. I mean, he's the heir apparent.
Well, apparently the testimony that really got the senators, we don't have direct source on this, but I'm assuming, and so I'll just make this very clear. This is my assumption, but based on the news reporting I've seen, apparently what the CIA was prepared to testify to, and apparently, presumably, what Gina Haspel did testify to, is that there were at least 11 correspondences, be they text message or telephone calls, between Khashoggi himself and the guy who was supervising the murder operation during the period of time that the murder operation was happening. So, I mean, I don't know how you walk away from that.
You simply can't. I mean, it was a hit.
Yep.
And President Trump is trying to cover for this, but how can they actually? We all know what the truth is, so let us find. Actually admit the truth is what the truth is. I mean, we know that he ordered the death, and that we should actually hear what we actually know.
And the question that we should be discussing, Mark, is what do we do about this? How does the United States change its posture relative to Saudi Arabia now that it's fairly clearly established that the guy running that country is out of control? He's killed tens of thousands of children in Yemen. Hundreds of thousands of citizens. There's 13 million people who within 6 to 12 months will be dead from starvation. And he's blockading food and medicine from coming into the country, and bombing the crap out of their infrastructure system so that they can't get things distributed even if they show up at the ports. This is a very problematic relationship that we have, and it's one that has deep roots. It was dramatically amplified or strengthened during the administration of George Herbert Walker Bush and his son George W. Bush because of their deep connections to the Saudi royal family. And it's one that today I think we need to completely reconsider. Mark, thanks for raising the topic. It's an important one. Brett in Portland. Hey, Brett, what's up?
Hello.
Hey.
So I just heard you for the first time yesterday, and I was very dumbfounded to hear somebody say, horse to sparrow, which is kind of ironic that you were talking to Matt Taibbi today about, division and, hyperpartisanship through media. And I was just so shocked to hear somebody on the radio who's not, so reactionary. So my question is that the hyperpartisanship isn't just an America issue, it's more globally, and you see it through like fascist parties and strong left-wing parties all over the world, like Bolsonaro.
Yep.
Orban. Philippines, you have
yep.
Duterte.
Yep.
Spain, just the Vox Party just won. And the hyperpartisanship is not just the media, but just the failure of social democracies to basically provide for the people. I mean,
well, and to a large extent, Brett, that's a consequence of the infiltration of the political and public sphere Very intentional, by the way. Lewis Powell in 1971 laid out the blueprint for this, which was followed over the next decade, leading right to the Reagan presidency. The infiltration into the media of great wealth with a neoliberal agenda, a so-called libertarian, or what historically might have been called fascistic agenda, which is that government, is 73% of Americans, when Reagan, the year that Reagan was sworn into office, said that they felt that the government could always be trusted to do the right thing. Today, that's 18%. And Reagan kicked off this process by saying, the 9 most frightening words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And he went on to say in his first inaugural that the government is not the solution to our problems, it is the cause of our problems. And so this wasn't just to put down government. This was to reduce the government's ability to regulate the behavior of wealthy people and big corporations. And that's pretty much where they're at right now. And these powers, these entities, in many cases are the ones that are feeding these movements. And, it works to their benefit if they can get people fighting with each other and hating each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You weaken the state so it can no longer provide, and then it's...
Yeah, it's a divide and conquer strategy by the billionaires.
Yeah. It's like my favorite saying, if you don't induct the young men into the tribe, they'll eventually burn the village.
Yeah.
But if you look at, Brazil, for example, they had a problem with WhatsApp. That was their propaganda spreader. And essentially, the division is so spread out because you have these huge swaths of people who aren't even exploitable by capital anymore. Mm-hmm. So inevitably they'll go to the internet, they'll go to all these other things. And if the media wasn't essentially there doing it, which I 100% don't agree with that it should be as hyper-partisan as it is, but it's almost an inevitability and it would find its way.
Yeah. Well, this is why raw capitalism doesn't work, and we've seen this over and over and over again. It always basically destroys the societies that use it, and that's why Franklin Roosevelt said we're going to have regulated capitalism, and that worked really well until Reagan came along and said let's deregulate it, and we've got to get controls over the power of great wealth. Brett, thanks for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
In about 4 minutes, we're going to check in with Luke Vargas from Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world. Stick around. And welcome back. Dave in St. Laborie, Nebraska. Am I saying it right, Dave?
Yes, that's right. That's right, Tom.
What's up, Dave?
You're a pleasure to listen to every day. And
thank you.
I guess the thing that I'm sitting back. I'm retired on a Bricklayers International Trowel Bricklayers International pension and a local pension, and I went through that whole fruition of the Reagan era. Well, even when I graduated from high school in 1966, I moved to California from Nebraska, and it was a good experience. And even back then, I started out as an apprentice, a machinist, and it was non-union. And even then, after 60 days, I received in my insurance benefits and my eyeglasses and
right, because they had even though it wasn't a union shop, they had to compete with union shops. That was a third of America, so that the unions set the wage floors.
I know it, and I just can't figure out today why the U word is not being used that much anymore. I just don't understand that. It's like
well, it's used a lot by working people. It's used a lot by Democrats. You'll hear Bernie Sanders go on and on about it, forever, and progressives in general. But it's not used in the media. I mean, you've got one of the big three networks right now is fighting to destroy their own union. The union that operates within their space. So
but another thing, sitting out here in the middle of Red County, I'm. People just don't understand. They just want to do everything on their own way, and I think that what bothers me, they just don't understand that if everybody gets in, if there's some solidarity, even on insurance. I mean, that Affordable Care Insurance, what an advantage, and it would have worked perfectly if everybody would have gotten in on that.
Yeah.
The more you get in, the less it's going to cost you.
That's right. Yeah, economies of scale.
Absolutely, and. That's just like the unions. When I joined the union, I'm understanding, the reason they could take care of us. And I mean, I wouldn't be able to retire now if I didn't have my pension, and to have that opportunity. And it's just,
and sadly, Dave,
everybody responsible.
Yeah, and sadly, Dave, if you have kids or grandchildren, odds are that they will never have that experience. They will not be able to retire with a union pension because unless they happen to be one of the lucky few who have a government job in a blue state, they're out of luck.
I actually got a son that's a lineman, and he's in a union. So.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
And he understands the value because he lived with it.
Yeah.
He lived with it growing up, and.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, my generation. It was my dad's generation, really. I mean, he came of age in the 40s and worked until I don't know whenever it was, but worked for 40 years in a tool and die shop, and that generation saw this extraordinary growth of the middle class. The middle class was actually growing faster than the top 5%. And the reason why was because of unions, and in large part. It was also because we had a top tax rate that was above 50%. You can look at any country in the world, and when the top tax rate's above 50%, inequality is decreased and equality increases. When it's below 50% in any country in the world, inequality will get worse and worse and worse over time until it finally breaks the back of the economy, which I think we're very, very close to right now. Dave, thanks for the call and for the great story. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour. Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive, and so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669, 877-378-8669, and of course you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive, and in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $20 contribution, and $20 may not sound like a lot of money, but to Free Speech TV, actually it is. This is an entire television network that runs on a little tiny budget. For the $20 contribution, you get a Free Speech TV sticker, 3x8 clear window with the logo of Free Speech TV. Please call now.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
The 6 Ways America. Let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. Our report today brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Loving What You Do, Ellen Ratner's new book. On the line with us is the chief foreign correspondent for Talk Media News, Luke Vargas. You can follow him on Twitter at The Courier. And Luke, I understand that Gina Haspel finally testified to the United States Senate. What did she tell them, and how did they react about Khashoggi?
Yeah, some crucial details about the CIA director's testimony to members of the Senate today. One of the biggest, most pronounced things is that she only spoke to Senate leadership, which was sort of a compromise reached by the White House between them and the leaders of the Senate. What we've already seen is that this is backfiring. So to pull back, Haspel was supposed to testify to the full Senate last week ahead of that vote about whether to cut off U.S. support or advance a bill that would cut off U.S. support for the war in Yemen. And the White House said Haspel, the only person who had heard the Khashoggi murder audio, would not be able to attend. Now, that already raised suspicions among lawmakers. Now, at the last minute, the White House said, look, the full Senate won't be able to hear about this. It's never good when, I know Rand Paul is not the voice of all that many people in the country, but I do think he does speak for some of the mentality among the backbenchers, even within the Republican caucus, who feel like they're being shut out here. Yeah. He said today that, he was furious that he was barred from hearing about this. And those that were in the meeting don't sound like they've really been comforted. Quite the opposite. You saw Lindsey Graham come out and call Mohammed bin Salman a wrecking ball. He said his assessment is now that the Saudi crown prince was directly involved, complicit in the murder. And finally, his sort of, money quote is that he, quote, cannot support arms sales to Saudi Arabia, end quote, as long as bin Salman is on the throne. Bob Corker basically saying there's also difference between daylight and sunlight between last week's testimony and this week's. So you're getting this dynamic. I think that's coming up in the Senate right now in particular. And I think it's visible today on Mohammed bin Salman, visible last week on the Yemen vote, and I think it's actually going to come up in differences on trade down the line. But it's that some Republicans in Congress, Tom, are really starting to feel, especially at the leadership level, like they're basically being misled by this administration, the cabinet, the White House.
Sure. And there's probably a reason.
From their own party. Right?
And there's probably a reason for that, Luke. I mean, your nose is deeper into the news than mine is, I think, on most days. But it certainly looks to me like Jared Kushner having to get $1 billion worth of financing for his 666 Fifth Avenue building, which he ultimately got from Middle Eastern interests that are aligned with Khashoggi, aligned with Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia and aligned with the UAE. I think it was specifically out of the UAE that the money came. But these are Jared Kushner's people. I mean, he's like in tight with these people, and also there's this strong relationship between Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel and Mohammed bin Salman. So you've got Republicans who are getting kind of whipsawed. Israel wants to keep Saudi Arabia strong and safe. Saudi Arabia, controls 6 or 9% of our oil. I forget which it is. And then you've got people inside the administration, senior people inside the administration, specifically Jared and his wife Ivanka, whose financial survival depends on this royal family. So, at what point do Republicans say, we're going to pull the plug?
You're right. You're not going to hear many Senate Republicans go on Meet the Press and complain about the things that you just identified, but they're well aware of them. And they're watching over the last few months as people who were previously seen as sort of adults in the room, people like Pompeo and the Secretary of State in particular, who might have been seen as if you could get them in private testimony, would be able to kind of give you the truth about what's going on within the administration.
Pompeo was lying through his teeth this last weekend
exactly.
on TV.
They're finding that you have to contort yourself so much to explain away decisions, which are often made with, by Jared Kushner or by the president for a whole host of different reasons other than they're the best move for, the establishment or sort of for mainstream foreign policy thinking and for the government. And so I think that's made those people, they've lost credibility now. And Republicans, I think that will impact their perceived sort of loyalty to the president, particularly as the Russia investigation continues. I mean, I agree. You can see that in many respects.
To what extent is Qatar pulling out of OPEC, after having been beat up by Saudi Arabia now for a number of years? To what extent is that going to impact this debate in the United States, and what impact is that having over there? We have about 45 seconds, Luke.
I'll keep it brief. I won't get into too much of the impact in the U.S., but look, Qatar is a gas producer. They only produce 2% of OPEC's oil. So them leaving is mostly a symbolic hit. It's not going to shake up energy markets, but I think it does sort of speak to this breakdown of multilateral frameworks of all sorts in the world today, whether it's at the G20, whether it's even within sort of more narrow economic groups like OPEC, that, countries are preferring to sort of pull out their interests on their own, right, and try and maximize them in a bilateral setting, Qatar versus Saudi Arabia, for instance, as opposed to rallying around these joint calls. And so I think we will see more competition between oil and gas in the Gulf region. And again, maybe I'm not crying a tear over OPEC losing a member, but it does sort of show you that even when a group like that can't hang together in the world right now, countries kind of want to go it alone or in more narrow groups.
Yeah, like just before World War I, maybe?
The comparisons are not good ones.
Yeah, I agree. Luke Vargas, the Courier on Twitter. Luke, thanks a lot for dropping by.
Thank you.
Great talking with you. We'll be back. Mike Farrell, the humanitarian, actor, and activist on the death penalty issues, is going to be with us right after the news at the top of the hour, and then we'll continue about the economy.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive, and so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. And of course, you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive. And in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $72 contribution, you get the new edition. Troy Miller and I spent a year and a half going through all the research and updating everything and getting this thing exactly right with all the new climate change information, the last hours of ancient sunlight. That's with a $72 contribution, autographed by the author. Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive, and so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. And of course, you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive. And in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $20 contribution, and $20 may not sound like a lot of money, but you know, to Free Speech TV, actually it is. This is an entire television network that runs on a little tiny budget. With a $20 contribution, you get a Free Speech TV sticker, 3x8 clear window with a logo of Free Speech TV. Please call now.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Hey, we really need your help right now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. You've heard me say it a lot. It's probably on your screen. The Free Speech TV, if you want this network to keep running, to keep going, I mean, you know, probably 2 failed fundraising drives, and we're going to wrap it up. I mean, that's how important this is. This is the principal source of funding for this television network is you and people like you. And, you know, I get it that some people it's tight, they can't afford it. You know, I understand that. I'm not asking for anybody to contribute money if they can't afford to. But I also know, and just from the years that I listened to public radio and only occasionally called in and made a contribution, that most people, you know, they go, oh, well, you know, there's a fund drive pitch going on. I think I'll go make a sandwich, or time to use the bathroom. You know, but it's not time to pick up the phone and, you know, participate. Well, it needs to be. We're way behind, and we need your help. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. And, you know, there are some premiums with certain contribution levels with a $20 gift. We've got this Free Speech TV 3x8-inch clear window sticker. With a $60 gift, you get a Tag Your It coffee mug with my picture on it, for better or for worse. Wasn't my idea. With a $72 gift, you get the 2008 edition of my book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. This is new and improved, and in fact, there's probably about that much new material in it that, you know, it's a good chunk. It was about 20% of the whole book got changed to update all the climate change stuff, and this is a great gift for the holidays. If you know anybody who has any interest at all in climate change and sociology and anthropology and history, in democracy, I mean, just all kinds of topics are covered in this book, all within the wrap of you know, ancient sunlight being fossil fuels. And it's only the second book that's been endorsed by God in the last 2,000 years. 2,000 years ago, in the New Testament, God endorsed the Old Testament, right? And back, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, in Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh's book, God says you need to read The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight if you want to know what's going on with climate change and things. And it was so cool that we issued a news release. God has endorsed a book for the second time in history. So, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but, it's a true story. I don't know that it's actually God, but in any case, that's with a $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt and a sticker. That could be $10 a month for a year. With a $240 gift, Louise and I are putting together a webinar. We're going to do this online and live, and we're going to be talking about how NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, I'm not only trained as an NLP practitioner, but also as an NLP trainer. Louise is trained as an NLP practitioner, as I recall, or master practitioner, I guess it is. We've written books about NLP, NLP and its application to ADHD. That book is called Healing ADD. My book on NLP and trauma is called Walking Your Blues Away, and my book on NLP and political communication is called Cracking the Code. So we've been in this stuff for a long time, and it's going to be a fascinating webinar, $240. Talks about communication and interpersonal relations and business and all kinds of things. With a $360 gift, you get 5 books: The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, The Thom Hartmann Reader, and Rebooting the American Dream, all by me, and Greg Palast's The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. With a $480 gift, you get everything that I've mentioned, the sticker, the T-shirt, the mug, the Tag Your Coffee mug, the Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, the Thom Hartmann Reader, Rebooting the American Dream, Best Democracy Money Can Buy. I mean, this is the kitchen sink, $480, or $40 a month for a year. And with $1,000, come to Portland, Oregon here, and you can watch the last hour of the show, and I'll take you to lunch.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, broadcasting on commercial radio stations from coast to coast on Sirius XM all across the North American continent, on Pacifica stations across America, Europe, and Africa, on American Forces Radio, and every U.S. military base in the world, on your electronic devices via TuneIn, Progressive Voices, your smart speaker, and the Thom Hartmann app, and simulcast as television by Free Speech TV Network on Dish Network, DirecTV, and cable systems nationwide. So glad to have you with us. On the line with us is Mike Farrell. And Mike, A, welcome back to the show, but B, I was going to play this video before I brought you in, but then I just kind of blundered into it. But hey, welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you very much.
Actor,
nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's great talking with you. Actor, activist, humanitarian, author, and the president of Death Penalty Focus. I saw this little 30-second video on YouTube, and it just blew me away. Let me just play this here for our viewers and listeners.
I've seen too much killing, and not just on TV. Since 1976, over 1,400 women and men have been executed in our prisons. Some were later found to be innocent. In California, 743 people in cages on death row wait to die. 60% are people of color. 20 states where people are safe have no death penalty. Why do we? It's a dark time in America. Join me in asking Governor Brown to declare a moratorium on executions and commute all death sentences to life in prison. For a just, moral state, end the death penalty in California.
This is remarkable. The website is deathpenalty.org. The Twitter handle is DPFocus, as in Death Penalty Focus. Mike, tell us about Death Penalty Focus and about the work that you're doing.
Well, it's an abolition organization, a 501c3 educational organization. I've been the chair for 25 years, I guess now.
Wow.
President, I should say, chair. We have a new chair. President of the board of directors, and we've been working. It's sort of been an uphill slog, as you know, Tom, with the public kind of wedded to the notion that the death penalty is somehow justified and appropriate. But we've worked through education and as much outreach as we could do legally, as well as two attempts to put forward initiatives here in California, where we have the largest death row in the nation, two, just waken people to the fact that the death penalty really brutalizes us all. It's racist in application. It costs a hell of a lot more money than does keeping people in prison for the rest of their lives, if necessary. But it entraps and kills innocent people. So it's simply a blot on everything that we believe this country is about. And more and more we are coming to the understanding. We as a people are coming to the understanding that we really don't need this, and it's not serving us.
Yeah, I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but of the OECD countries, the 34 developed countries in the world, I think we're the only one that still has a death penalty, aren't we?
Yes, that's right. The European Union has given it. Matter of fact, in order to become a member of the European Union, you have to agree to give up the death penalty. When I started this, and it's not just me, but when we, I should say, started this, of the 190, say, organizations recognized as such by the United States, recognized as such by the United Nations, about 30 were abolitionist states, and the rest were using or at least had on the books the death penalty. And today it's reversed. Today there are only about 35, I think, killing countries. And
in the entire world?
In the world.
Yeah, it's remarkable. There's been, George Herbert Walker Bush having died this weekend and being buried on Wednesday. There's been a renewed conversation, particularly among communities of color, particularly in the African American community, about how consequential Bush's decision in 1988 to use the Willie Horton ad in order to become president, how consequential that decision was, because in large part what it did is it caused the Democrats, specifically Bill Clinton, who became president 4 years later, to conclude that that in order to beat a Republican like Mike Dukakis had failed to do, you had to be, tough as nails, quote, tough on crime, and that meant cracking down on people of color, cracking down on welfare for people of color, and cracking down on and beating your chest and roaring about the death penalty, which is mostly disproportionately applied to people of color. And that was the story in many regards of the Clinton presidency, right through minimum mandatory sentences and all this kind of stuff. Are we, and we've kind of hung out in that place ever since. I was expecting Obama to reverse a lot of this stuff, and to the best of my knowledge, he didn't. But it seems to me that outside of the angry white echo chamber that exists in right-wing hate radio and Fox News, which is perhaps 20% of the American population, and Trump world, outside of that, it seems like Americans, left, right, and center, are waking up to the obscenity of the death penalty, or am I reading this wrong? What does it seem to you like the trends are going? And do you agree with that analysis of that '88 election?
Oh, indeed. It wasn't the first, obviously. I mean, we've been doing this for years, but it was the most egregious in the modern era, I think. And from that point, the death penalty used to be what was known as the third rail of democratic politics. You just couldn't touch it. You couldn't say that you didn't like it. You couldn't say that you opposed it. You really had to be, as you suggest, tough on crime and killing all the people. And Clinton went down to Arkansas and presided over the execution of Ricky Ray Rector, a brain-damaged man who didn't know that he was actually being executed and left the dessert for his last meal in the cell from which he was taken for when he returned.
Wow.
But yes, in the last 10 years, we have now had 10 states, Washington State being the most recent, give up the death penalty. Some through legislative action, some through gubernatorial action, and always with the result being that instead of the crime rate rising, as people suggest, number of murders rising, it's been just the reverse. So people are, and the savings in money, and I hate to put a dollar and cents tag on the issue of life, but in terms of the expenditure of tax money, people have found that you get much more bang for your buck by doing the right thing with your tax money instead of wasting it on killing people and maintaining the kind of systems that do such harm, not only to the people that are executed, but to the people who are doing the executing, the people who we deputize to take lives in our name and suffer for it.
Yeah. Did you see Michael Moore's Next to the Last movie, Where to Invade Next?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
If I may recommend that to you, in that movie there is the one part of the movie where I actually started crying sitting in the theater. In fact, I'm close to it just thinking of it. Was where he went to Norway and looked at their prison system and talked to them about how they treat their prisoners and their thoughts on the death penalty. And it is so powerful. I mean, it's just so powerful. If it was possible to get Michael Moore to even give anybody permission to extract that clip and spread it far and wide, it would be so. But anyway, what can we do about this? We're talking with Mike Farrell, the actor, activist, humanitarian, author, and president of Death Penalty Focus. Deathpenalty.org is the website. DP Focus is the Twitter handle. People who are listening or watching right now and saying to themselves, yeah, this really is a big deal. What do I do?
Well, one thing they can do is, as I suggested in the spot you played, is contact Governor Brown. Jerry Brown, we all know, philosophically opposes the death penalty. For some reason, he has refused to stand up on the issue since he's been in office this second time. He didn't support either of our initiatives in 2012 or 2016 to do away with the death penalty. He didn't oppose it, but he didn't support it, which would have been all the difference. But what he can do now in the next 4 weeks, he's going to remain in office, is a number of things. He can simply declare a moratorium on death, say it is wrong, and begin the process of commuting sentences of death to sentences of life.
This would be a legacy builder.
Pardon me?
This would be a legacy builder for him.
Absolutely, I think it would be something that would accrue to his place in history in an extraordinary way. Because, as I said before, California we have 743 women and men on our death row in California. Wow. That's almost 25% of the entire country's death row. And if he were to end that, it would elevate him in the status in every way you can think of. Right. But it would also begin a process that I think is inexorable. It's happening anyway. Oregon probably will be next. Kansas is looking at it. There are so many of these states that have come to realize it serves them not at all. But I think Brown's action really could be the coup de grace, if you will, right. in this awful policy.
So people can figure out how to contact Jerry Brown, particularly if they're not Californians, through deathpenalty.org. You have that information on the website?
Yes,
okay.
Indeed.
Great. So that's a great one. And I'd say track down that YouTube clip and share it with your friends. And great organization that you're doing here, the Death Penalty Focus. Mike Farrell. Mike, thanks so much for dropping by today.
My pleasure, Tom. Nice to talk to you.
Great talk. It's always great talking with you, Mike. And this is such a very, very important issue. It's literally life and death. Thank you.
Indeed.
We'll be right back. It's 17 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with your calls and more of the news of the day right after this. And welcome back. Sandy in Norwood, North Carolina. Hey, Sandy, thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
Hi, Tom. This Medicare for All, it seems to me it's a little misleading. Are we going to put everybody on Medicare, or are we going to put everybody on universal care like other countries have?
Well, the Medicare for All proposals are universal care. They're not what people over 65 know Medicare to be, which has all these holes that the Republicans have drilled in it over the years for health insurance companies. In Canada, it's called Medicare. Their system is called Medicare.
So, Medicare only pays 80%.
Right.
Would we have to buy Medigap policies still?
Well, I'm sure that the Republicans, to their dying breaths, would argue that, but that's not what is in any of the proposals from any of the Democrats. All of their proposals are that Medicare should go 100%, fully cover everything, and many of them are including, like Bernie's proposals, including vision, dental, and pharmaceuticals. And then on top of that, that not only would we transform Medicare on the top end like that, for 65 and older, but then that would be available to everybody in the country. And the major ways that the industry is pushing back right now is radical expansions of Medicare Advantage benefits, which are privatized. It's not even Medicare. It simply has the name Medicare attached to it, but it's not Medicare. It's private health insurance that people get from private companies. And it is damaging Medicare itself. And this is what they're trying to do. They have about a third of Americans now over 65 on Medicare Advantage. And if they can get that to 2/3, it will kill Medicare altogether. And, so they're doing this giant privatization thing. And then B, they just, a bunch of them just got together. This is the hospitals, the doctors, the drug companies, and the health insurance companies got together and created this new umbrella lobbying group that is pouring hundreds or tens of millions so far. Presumably it'll be hundreds of millions of dollars into congressional races, into politics, and into trying to influence public opinion through think tanks and getting articles placed and getting their shills, their talking heads on TV and things like that, to try to convince Americans that Medicare for all would be a bad thing.
Well, it just was a little misleading to me. I had questions about why are we calling it Medicare when Medicare only pays 80%.
Yeah.
I understand that now that you've explained that, but I'm sure I'm not the only one with questions like that. It's not being discussed anywhere.
Right. Well, Sandy, the reason why I had this conversation with Bernie Sanders on this show maybe 6 or 7 years ago when he first started pitching for Medicare for all, and back when he was doing Brunch with Bernie. And I said, why call it Medicare? I mean, Medicare only covers 80% of expenses. And Bernie said, probably 90% of American citizens who are under 65 don't know that. They think that Medicare covers everything, and that once you hit 65, it's Fat City. You've got, government. The government now is going to pay for your health care. And he said, so we're taking that public perception that there is already a single-payer system, and Medicare is a single-payer system, that there already is a single-payer system in the United States that works just fine, thank you very much, and using that knowledge, even though it's an incomplete knowledge, using that to springboard it. Because when you say single-payer health care to a 30-year-old, they have no idea what you're talking about. But when you say Medicare, they're like, oh, that stuff my grandpa gets. Yeah, that seems kind of cool. That's why they did it.
So this new plan would do away with traditional Medicare, Medicaid, Medigap, and Medicare Advantage, right?
And with the insurance that employers get, workman's compensation as well. I mean, there's all these different kinds of insurance, medical insurance that we have. It's fractured. It's all over the place, which is why it's so profitable for the insurance companies. And these kinds of insurance just don't even exist in a lot of these other countries. Yes, that's absolutely right, Sandy. Thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. We'll be right back. Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive. And so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. And of course, you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive. And in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $20 contribution, and $20 may not sound like a lot of money, but to Free Speech TV, actually it is. This is an entire television network that runs on a little tiny budget. With a $20 contribution, you get a Free Speech TV sticker, 3x8 clear window with a logo of Free Speech TV. Please call now. And support our program. Back, Thom Hartmann here with you. The economy is, it's fixing to get to be big news and even bigger news soon. And in the midst of all this political corruption that we're experiencing, we're a North Carolina House seat. Now this woman has come out and said, yes, the campaign paid me to go door to door and harvest ballots, is the phrase she used. Yeah, her husband is a convicted felon, two-time convicted felon. Just great, just exactly what we need. Meanwhile, a new $1 million has been thrown into a new group in Georgia for a runoff election today for Georgia's Public Service Commission. This is the nuclear utility wants the ratepayers, the people who buy electricity in Georgia, wants them to pay for the multi-billion-dollar mistakes that they've made with the nuclear plant Vogtle that they're building. And so they're trying to get the Republican incumbent reelected because there's a Democrat coming along saying the ratepayers shouldn't pay because you guys screwed up. You should pay. You got deep pockets. You got plenty of money. And now you've got the Trump administration promoting Medicare Advantage plans, which are going to destroy Medicare and expand privatization of Medicare, just in time for us to talk about Medicare for All, because this is part of the industry's strategy to destroy the whole Medicare for All bandwagon. Plus, you've got a couple of Midwestern governors, or Republicans rather, legislatures in Wisconsin and Michigan preparing to basically neuter the incoming Democratic governors. Just all kinds of bizarre stuff going on. So on top of that, this massive political corruption that we're seeing, this widespread political corruption on the part of the Republicans, the yield curve flattened yesterday. In fact, it inverted yesterday. Now, I realize some of you are going, what the hell is he talking about? The yield curve is the difference that 2-year Treasury bond, or 3-year Treasury bonds, the difference in yield, that is the interest rate that it pays, between a 3-year Treasury bond and a 10-year Treasury bond. And every time, if you look all the way back to the founding of the Fed in 1913, every time the short-term bonds, the 3-year bonds, or even the 5-year bonds, every time they start paying higher interest rates than the long-term bonds, the 10-year bonds, a recession follows. Because that happens because investors are investing in a different way because they're anticipating a recession. In other words, this is like, it doesn't cause a recession, it's a leading indicator. And sometimes it takes a year or so for the inverted yield curve to produce a recession, or for that recession to come about. But it happened yesterday. And it happened yesterday, and this is the most fascinating part of the whole thing, I think. It happened yesterday because yesterday our Treasury Department had to auction off $129 billion worth of bonds. Really what they're doing is they're going into the public marketplace and they're borrowing $129 billion so that they can give that $129 billion to billionaires like the Koch brothers, and as part of their giant tax cut. This is still the ongoing GOP tax scam. And when they went into the marketplace to borrow that $129 billion, well, here, this is a quote from Chuck's newsletter over at aidenforecast.com. Foreign holders of treasuries like China and Japan have shrunk their portfolio in U.S. government bonds this year. And a recent barometer of participation in Treasury auctions suggests overseas buyers have not been showing up in force, according to Treasury Department data. So when foreign buyers are saying, we don't want to hold U.S. bonds anymore, we're not going to loan the United States any more money, and then the government has to borrow $129 trillion in one day in order to fund a tax break for billionaires. At that point, the people who are buying the bonds are saying, you got to give me more. I don't just want, 3%. I want 3.2%. You've got to give me more money in interest for the money that I'm loaning you, U.S. federal government. And what that does is it jacks up the interest that is being paid by those bonds, those short-term bonds, those 3 and 5-year bonds, and flips the yield curve. Get ready. Hang on.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
This fact, by the way, was apparently not ignored by Wall Street today. The Dow is down substantially. We'll be right back. Hey, we really need your help right now. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. 877-378-8669. You've heard me say it a lot. It's probably on your screen. The Free Speech TV, if you want this network to keep running, to keep going, probably 2 failed fundraising drives, and we're going to wrap it up. I mean, that's how important this is. This is the principal source of funding for this television network is you and people like you. And, you know, I get it that some people it's tight, they can't afford it. You know, I understand that. I'm not asking for anybody to contribute money if they can't afford to. But I also know, and just from the years that I listened to public radio and only occasionally called in and made a contribution, that most people, you know, they go, oh, well, you know, there's a fund drive pitch going on. I think I'll go make a sandwich, or time to use the bathroom. You know, but it's not time to pick up the phone and, you know, participate. Well, it needs to be. We're way behind, and we need your help. 877-378-8669 is the telephone number. And, you know, there are some premiums with certain contribution levels with a $20 gift. We've got this Free Speech TV 3x8-inch clear window sticker. With a $60 gift, you get a Tag Your It coffee mug with my picture on it, for better or for worse. Wasn't my idea. With a $72 gift, you get the 2008 edition of my book, The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight. This is new and improved, and in fact, there's probably about that much new material in it that, you know, it's a good chunk. It was about 20% of the whole book got changed to update all the climate change stuff, and this is a great gift for the holidays. If you know anybody who has any interest at all in climate change and sociology and anthropology and history, in democracy, I mean, just all kinds of topics are covered in this book, all within the wrap of you know, ancient sunlight being fossil fuels. And it's only the second book that's been endorsed by God in the last 2,000 years. 2,000 years ago, in the New Testament, God endorsed the Old Testament, right? And back, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, in Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh's book, God says, you need to read The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight if you want to know what's going on with climate change and things. And it was so cool that we issued a news release. You know, God has endorsed a book for the second time in history. So, you know, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but, you know, it's a true story. I don't know that it's actually God, but in any case, that's with the $72 gift. With a $120 gift, you get the Free Speech TV T-shirt and a sticker. That could be $10 a month for a year. With a $240 gift, Louise and I are putting together a webinar. We're going to do this online and live, and we're going to be talking about how NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, I'm not only trained as an NLP practitioner, but also as an NLP trainer. Louise is trained as an NLP practitioner, as I recall, or master practitioner, I guess it is. You know, we've written books about NLP, NLP and its application to ADHD. That book is called Healing ADD. My book on NLP and trauma is called Walking Your Blues Away, and my book on NLP and political communication is called Cracking the Code. So we've been in this stuff for a long time, and it's going to be a fascinating webinar, $240. Talks about communication and interpersonal relations and business and all kinds of things. With a $360 gift, you get 5 books: The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, The Thom Hartmann Reader, and Rebooting the American Dream, all by me, and Greg Palast's The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. With a $480 gift, you get everything that I've mentioned. You know, the sticker, the T-shirt, the mug, the Tag Your It coffee mug, the Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight, Unequal Protection, the Thom Hartmann Reader, Rebooting the American Dream, Best Democracy Money Can Buy. I mean, this is the kitchen sink, $480. Or $40 a month for a year. And with $1,000, come to Portland, Oregon here, and you can watch the last hour of the show, and I'll take you to lunch. There's a nice restaurant right down the street that treats us very well and has great food. And it's always a fascinating time. I've just met some extraordinary people. I've learned a lot, and it's nice just getting to know the people who support Free Speech TV. So please call now, 877-378-8669. This is real. Free Speech TV really needs your help right now. It's a very, very critical time for this network. The political year last year and in through this year, with the elections coming up, has been a real challenge because a lot of people give their money to political causes rather than to Free Speech TV. We really need your help. 877-378-8669. Thank you so much for your help.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. It's 34 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. Peter in Scottsdale, Arizona. Hey, Peter, what's on your mind?
Hey, how's it going, Tom? Here's what's on my mind. This is in reference to the guest you had talking about the death penalty.
Mike Farrell.
And the death penalty typically, correct me if I'm wrong, is typically a liberal / Democrat stance to get rid of the death penalty. Is that correct?
I would say pretty much since, Bill Clinton was in favor of the death penalty. In fact, when he was campaigning in '92 for the presidency, he paused his campaign for a day to fly down to Arkansas to pull the switch on a guy who, as Mike Farrell pointed out, was so severely mentally retarded that he had set aside his cake from his last meal so that he could eat it when he came back to his cell after going to the death chamber. So the Democratic Party, when it was Clinton's Democratic Party, was pro-death penalty. But I would, and I'm not sure on Obama's watch, he didn't really do anything about that. But I would argue, Peter, that the Democratic Party that is reforming itself right now is going to be more pro-life.
Yeah.
And by the way, the
No,
pro-life
I agree
movement
with
is
that.
what they used to call the anti-death penalty movement before the
No,
abortion
I
people
agree with that.
hijacked it.
'Cause, in essence, the problem is the chance that you might accidentally kill an innocent person, therefore negates the whole process.
Right, and we know it's
Water
happened. In fact,
treatment.
we know that Rick Perry did it in Texas. We know who the guy is. I can't remember his name now, but we did several shows about it. This guy who was convicted of killing his wife and two daughters in a fire in his house, and they said it was arson, and he set the house on fire. They executed him, and then they discovered that the arson investigator who had said this, just routinely signed off on these things, and they brought a real arson investigator in, and he said, no, this was an electrical fire. And the guy was mourning. He had come home from a bar or something, and the house was on fire, and he couldn't get into it to save his wife and two daughters, and they died. And then they arrested him, put him in prison, and then they executed him. Rick Perry executed him. And it's just a horrible story, but it really illustrates the death penalty in America.
Yeah. So my question is then, how can somebody that's anti-death penalty for criminals or people in prison, maybe they're not, maybe they're innocent, how can someone who's anti-death penalty for someone in prison simultaneously be pro-death penalty for an unborn baby?
Well, I don't think you'll find anybody who's in favor of killing unborn babies. To be an unborn baby, you'd have to be in the last month of a pregnancy to be that viable that you'd call it a baby. I think the debate, Peter, is when does life begin? Is a blob of tissue that is less than a quarter inch long, or even smaller than the head of a pin, is how it starts out. Is that human life, or is that something that can become human life? And
that is an undisputable fact that is human life. Nobody argues that.
Well, I would argue that.
Okay. Is it a dog life, or is it a banana's life? Is it a
Well, it's human tissue.
Red Hot Chili
It's
Peppers
obviously human tissue, but if you're removing a piece of human tissue that has the potential to become another person, how is that different from removing a testicle that is filled with sperm that has the potential to become a human person?
Because a testicle will never be developed into a human being, a live human being like you and I. How many? An
implanted egg, or a fertilized and implanted egg, won't always develop into a human being either. About 1 out of 4 pregnancies ends up with a miscarriage. But the argument, Peter. You're not going to convince me, and I'm not going to convince you. I am of the opinion, personally. I'm just speaking for myself.
I'm open-minded. I know I'm very open-minded to it. Maybe you will convince me.
I think that Roe v. Wade. While I think that it was wrong what the Supreme Court did, They should not have created legislation, which is what they did. They defined 3 trimesters. They said there's different rules for each one of these 3 trimesters, and that's now the law of the land. That's the job of a legislature. That's not the job of the Supreme Court. And frankly, if Roe had not happened, if the Supreme Court had not ruled that way, I'm pretty sure that given the direction that America was moving in 1973, it was just 11 years after the birth control pill had been legalized, and women's suffrage, basically, women in the workplace, women in political power was really starting to happen. I think over the next decade or so, you would have had this happen state after state after state legislatively, and we would have achieved a consensus, and there wouldn't have been all these dead abortion doctors, and there wouldn't have been this absolute bloody, screaming fight between Americans over this issue. But I could be wrong. But my original point was that in the Roe decision, basically they said in the first trimester, it's still a piece of tissue. It has no sentence. It has it's not a living, our definition of living, obviously. But, that during that first trimester, it's really a part of a woman's body and she can do what she wants with it. During the second trimester, before she can get rid of that, she's got to come up with some really seriously good excuses, some good reasons. And during the third trimester, she can't do it at all unless she's going to die as a consequence of not doing it. And that's what Roe laid out, and that seems to me quite reasonable, actually.
No, I was just going to ask you that. So during the second trimester, that's universal through. I'm serious. I'm not being a smartass.
Yeah.
That's universal. That at that point there has to be some kind of serious issue in order for it to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Go back and read the Roe decision. Okay. Yeah, and most states have tightened it up even tighter than that. So in all your Republican states and several of the Democratic-controlled states, it's a hell of a lot harder to get an abortion, even with a reasonably good excuse, in the second trimester. It's just first. And go ahead.
And so it's the first 3 months it's relatively easy. The second 3 months it's very difficult, and I imagine the subsequent 3 months it's even.
It's virtually impossible. I mean, the so-called partial birth abortions, these are never used for birth control purposes. This is when you've got a baby that is dead or dying or so badly deformed that it's going to be born in insane pain and die 6 hours later. I mean, that's why they do those kinds of procedures. And as women have testified to in numerous op-eds over the years. So, this issue has been demagogued like crazy, in large part because of 1980. In 1979, Ronald Reagan was pro-abortion. He signed the most liberal abortion law in the United States as governor of California. He was all in favor of women being able to have an abortion if they wanted, pretty much under any circumstances. George Herbert Walker Bush in 1979 was a lifetime donor to Planned Parenthood, and it was one of the causes that he spoke for and to frequently. And what happened was in 79, as a result of the 73 Roe v. Wade decision, the other thing that happened in 1979 was that the Southern Baptist Convention, the Southern Baptist Church, sued the United States government in federal court, saying that the Hyde Amendment, which had been passed, I believe, in 77 or 78, which said that the federal government, no federal money can be used to pay for abortion. The Southern Baptists sued the federal government, saying that by adopting the Hyde Amendment, the federal government had violated the Establishment of Religion clause in the Constitution that says that the federal government may not create a state religion. They said that essentially what the Hyde Amendment did was establish Catholicism, or at least Catholic doctrine about abortion, as the law of the land in the United States, and that's wrong. That was 1979. At the end of 1970, toward the end of 1979, Jerry Falwell, alone, he was Southern Baptist, pretty much alone, decided this abortion thing really has legs. This is something that I can ride. This is something we can really make hay with. And he got together with Randall Terry and a bunch of other guys who were anti-abortion guys, and within 6 months swung the evangelical movement. He had several of his evangelical televangelist buddies, Jim Baker, and there was another one, I'm forgetting his name. All three of them decided that they were going to go anti-abortion in 79. So in 1980, at the beginning of that campaign year, when Reagan and Bush were on the Republican ticket, both of them changed their position on abortion.
And abortion then became basically a political issue. And Jerry Falwell and Randall Terry rode this thing to the tune of millions of dollars of personal income and tens of millions of dollars of institutional income. And it has been politicized ever since. And as I said, in the beginning of our conversation, I think in large part because the Supreme Court should not have legislated from the bench. Have I made sense, Peter?
No, absolutely. No, it is. You're like an encyclopedia. This is, or whatever.
Well, I'm writing a book right now on the Supreme Court, and yesterday I finished writing the chapter on Roe v. Wade. So,
no, it's because of my perception. And again, like I am not pretending to know everything or anything like that. Is the perception is generally that these abortions are easy to get at any time. I mean, whether that's saying that or whether it's just not the.
That's the demagoguery. That's the lie that is promoted by people who are not sincerely trying to prevent abortions, but are using it for political purposes. Because the fact of the matter is, if you look at the statistics, if you look at reality in this case, Peter, what you find is that the states with the loosest abortion laws, where it's the easiest for a woman to get an abortion, and with the largest number of abortion clinics, have the lowest rate of overall abortions. And, which seems counterintuitive. But the reason why is because those states that have easy access to abortion also have easy access to birth control and to prenatal care. Right. Women find out that they're pregnant earlier because they go in and get tested because it's easy and available to them, and they use birth control more regularly. And because those are all in the same place. Planned Parenthood offers all three of those things. So as a consequence, women don't get pregnant to begin with, and if they do get pregnant, they've got good prenatal care, they're less likely to have an abortion. So, when Bill Clinton was running in '92, and he said he wants to, yes, I'm opposed to abortion too, but, he didn't want to make it illegal. He said, I want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. And in fact, the position that I just laid out of having full access to abortion under the terms defined by Roe v. Wade actually reduces abortions. Whereas when you look at a state like Mississippi, where abortion is almost impossible to get, they have one of the highest rates in the country of abortions. They're just not legal, and therefore they have the highest rate in the country of women dying as a consequence of pregnancy. So it's like, we've got this all upside down, and Jerry Falwell and his buddies started all this in 1979 in order to get rich and famous, and I think it's just wrong. Peter, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. It's good to hear from you. Tim in Belle Plaine, Iowa. Hey, Tim, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. Personal story, our first child gestated 42 weeks, perfect condition. We lost that child during delivery due to complications. The state of Illinois gave us neither a birth certificate nor a death certificate.
Right.
It is settled law. It is not a child.
That's right. Yeah. It's not a child until it's born, legally.
That's right.
That's
right. Has to take a breath.
Okay, so was that your... And by the way, this was the position of the Catholic Church up until 200 years ago. It was, at various times, different, abortion was allowed at different points. But it was called quickening, and then there was inspire, right? Breath, the first breath, right. Thus the word inspiration. And there was the whole doctrine of inspiration that, the child, but anyhow, that's not, that was more than 200 years ago. Tim, thanks for the call and for,
thank you for your time.
Sure, and for contributing to the conversation. We'll be right back. It's 47 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. We'll be back with more of your calls after this.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back with more of your calls right after this. It's 47 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's going to take me just a second here to reboot my computer and make things work again. And it's not cooperating. So what I'm going to do is go to plan B, which is right here. And I'm going to put you on the air, but I don't know your name or where you're calling from. So if you could just please tell me your name and where you're calling from, you will hear a psh which says that you're on the air. So if you just heard that noise, you are on the air. What's your name and where are you calling from? Hello? Nope. Okay, that.
Hello, Tom?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Anthony from Tehachapi.
Okay. Hey, what's up, Anthony?
The last guest that you had on that was talking about abolishing the death penalty, that kind of really hit home for me because I'm recently retired. I used to work in a prison in Tehachapi, and I actually met a guy that was innocent in prison.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know that there's a certain percentage of people who are in prison who are innocent. I mean, and the Innocence Project, with the DNA stuff and going back and looking at all these guys who are on death row, finding that there's all these innocent people. I mean, it's just, and we've executed so many of them. It's so tragic.
And people believe that the death penalty, if you really want a person to suffer, give them life without parole. I've met so many inmates who used to tell me that they would rather have the death penalty after they've been in there 20, 30, 40 years. They would rather have the death penalty and execute than be in prison for such a long, length of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, wow. I mean, we really need to be doing something about this. This death penalty thing. Thanks a lot for the call.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, good talking with you. Whoops. Now it's not dropping my callers. You're going to have to hang up on your end. I'm sorry. And I can't put anybody on the air. Link to the server is down. Let's try it again. It's not working. Shira, we're going to have to restart everything, I think. So while Shira is rebooting our call screening system for the last 10 minutes of our show, I wanted to tell you about, actually there's two kind of funny stories in the news that are worth revisiting or checking out. The first is this website. It's called Writer, R-I-G-H-T-E-R, Writer. It's a new dating website for Trump supporters. You have to swear your loyalty to Donald Trump in order to get to this dating site. And the founder, Christy Edwards Lawton, has said that she started this because she's heard from so many Trump supporters who try to use mainstream dating apps like Tinder that they just completely get ignored. That they put that they're a Trump supporter on their dating profile. Nobody wants to date them. It's like, gee, incels, right? So anyhow, she says, we will have zero tolerance for any liberals who sign up. I have a very nice legal team that will be handling that. Although Lawton admitted it might be difficult to track down every heretic, Brad Reed writes for Raw Story, every heretic who didn't possess the prerequisite devotion to Donald Trump, she said that people just looking to troll lonely Trump fans would be easy to spot. So, if you're a lonely Trump fan and you want to have your date and not be picked on for being an idiot, Writer is your site, apparently. We'll be back. If we can make our phones work, I'll pick up more of your phone calls. And if not, I've got an amazing story to share with you. Stick around. Free Speech TV is in their fund drive right now, their fundraising drive. And so it would be a great time for you to call 877-378-8669. 877-378-8669. And of course, you can go to the Free Speech TV website and donate there as well. Please be sure to mention the show. There are a lot of great goodies that Free Speech TV is offering right now as part of the funds drive. And in fact, there's quite a few. But the important thing is to call 877-378-8669. Here's some information on one of the things that you can get. With a $20 contribution, and $20 may not sound like a lot of money, but to Free Speech TV, actually it is. This is an entire television network that runs on a little tiny budget. With a $20 contribution, you get a Free Speech TV sticker, 3x8 clear window with a logo of Free Speech TV. Please call now.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Third world country. Check it out. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you and Jim in Memphis, Tennessee. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind?
Oh, thanks, Tom. Well, I wanted to tell you about student loan debt real quickly. I left graduate school with $55,000 in student loan debt back in the 90s. I had tried to get a PhD. I could not finish my dissertation, so I'm ABD. Well, anyway, today I have it's now over $155,000 because of the interest. When I got out of graduate school, I was never able to complete my doctorate, and there's a lot of us like this, by the way. It's very hard to get a PhD in liberal arts. It's harder than law school. But so we accumulate all the student loan debt, and I know many people in my shoes, we cannot pay the student loan debt. So I got on income-based repayment plans over the years, and so my payments have been very small. I didn't make a lot of money for many years. I had forbearances, so all this interest is racked up. And I have a partner, my husband now, who is an adjunct. He finished his PhD in history. He also has over $50,000 in student loan debt. He graduated, he got his PhD in 2004, never could get a job teaching history with a PhD. He's been adjuncting. And by the way, 60% of college faculty are adjuncts.
Now, for people who don't know what we're talking about here, Jim, an adjunct basically is a part-time, no-benefit employee, right?
Exactly. So my partner, my husband, thankfully we're married, and he can get on my insurance. He has no benefits. He has no retirement. And he's been working for over 10 years now as an adjunct, and because he cannot get a full-time job.
Right.
Now, here's the question. Tying this into suicide, my partner is clinically depressed, and he's contemplated suicide over this.
Oh, my.
I'm not depressed clinically, but I've even contemplated it.
Yeah.
Because what do? There is no forgiveness. I've been in bankruptcy twice, and thanks to Joe Biden's bankruptcy law, you cannot wipe out student loan debt. So we are stuck with this debt through the rest of our lives. And even when we retire, and you may have heard of these stories, there are people on Social Security getting their Social Security taken.
To pay their student loan debts.
When you default.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a serious problem. And unfortunately, even Bernie Sanders and a lot of progressives aren't addressing the issue. They're talking about free college, which is great.
Bernie has on numerous occasions said that we need to reform the bankruptcy law so that you can discharge student loan debt with bankruptcy.
But we need to forgive the student loan debt. It
Yeah,
would boost
I agree.
the economy because it needs to
It's
be wiped out.
$1.5 trillion.
There shouldn't be student loans.
We have spent $3 trillion on Afghanistan and $2 trillion on Iraq. If we can do that, we can spend $1.5 trillion, wipe out the student loan debt, and then go to free college for everyone in the United States. There shouldn't be student loan debt in the first place. It should not even exist. It's an abomination. So I'm with you, Jim, and a lot of Democrats are with you. So the challenge that we face is to get Democrats in a really solid position of power to do something about this. Because it wasn't, you're right that Joe Biden, helped write that law that forbade it, and there were a few other Democrats. Debbie Stabenow came on this show to defend it at the time, back in 2005. I got in a fight with her on the air about it. I don't think she's been on her show since then. But it was really largely a Republican effort. They just had some Democrats sign on with it. So this is something that needs to get fixed, and I'm with you. Jim, I got to move along, but thank you for the call, and thank you for sharing your story. It makes these kinds of things, these academic discussions, real. I really appreciate it. Craig in Crestview, Florida. Craig, we got about 30 seconds here till the end of the show. What's up?
Okay, well, that people who have killed once kill again. Many of them on death row have already had one murder, then they were paroled or killed a guard or killed a judge or escaped.
Not many.
And they kill again.
Not many.
Yeah,
that may happen once in a while, but I think that people who have actually been convicted of first-degree murder, I don't know of any state in the union that paroles such people. So, I don't know. You want to debate the death penalty, call me back tomorrow. We'll have enough time. I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's the end of the show. And Eric and other callers on hold, my apologies. Give us a shout tomorrow, and we'll continue the conversation. Thanks so much for being with us today. It's a consequential time in the history of the United States, in the history of the world. I mean, everything from climate change, which is the history of the world, to, is Donald Trump going to go to jail, and are we going to reform our systems that have been so corrupted by Republicans on the Supreme Court and in Congress? It's big stuff, big stuff. And you need to play a role in it, because democracy is not a spectator sport. So get out there and get active. Tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
Bye.